Hello,
Hello.
hello, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
How
I'm just trying to get myself
are you?
organized today.
I am
Oh,
back. I am
yes,
back.
we have
Yes,
Josie back. That's so exciting. How
I
are you
know.
doing,
I
Josie?
know. I am doing okay. I like some of the viewers may not know, I was fighting a vicious infection and was in the hospital for a whole week. Like I went into the hospital with septic. That's how bad it was. Like, I
Not
was
good.
literally fighting for my life for a little bit there, but it was fine. I was still watching, Takis while I was in a hospital bed because priorities. So
Yeah.
everybody here uplifted me as, we got to hear the transphobic nonsense that came through over the week, so but no, I'm very happy to be back and back into the fight for this election. I'm wearing my Madam President shirt. Like, I don't know if you can see that there. So I'm like feeling extra election today. So yeah, always happy to rep the swag, of course.
Very
How are
cool.
you?
I'm doing good. I'm coming off of a COVID infection, so that's why I'm a little bit congested. I'm trending in an upward direction as far as I can tell. Of course, it's hard to know until 6 weeks out if you're going to have any like long-term impacts. But yeah, we're sick. So we're
Yeah,
on the mend, though. It seems like things are getting better for you. It seems like things are getting better for me. I'm gonna have like an in-depth conversation with my doctor next week about like if there's anything long term we need to be looking at. So yeah, exciting
yeah,
stuff. So
fun.
yeah, this might be the first time you've been on since we shifted the format ever so slightly.
No, I've
So
been there.
you've been on once? Okay.
I've been one once. So yeah, we've
You
had
you know the deal.
with the team Josie that people have to put in. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And we'll get into that a little bit later. So just so everybody knows, we have open lines. You can call in. The number is 720-619-2288, or you can call in through the website link in the description below. So we are looking forward to having some fun conversations with people. We still have plenty of room on the lines. Um, and we're here. We're trans
Yeah.
people. We're gonna talk about like transphobic stuff potentially.
Yeah.
And trans people call in sometimes and it's a good show.
Yeah, and if you want to talk about if you're not feeling trans but you want to talk about the election, I'm always happy to do that too.
Josie's always happy to talk about the election. I
Always
am not always as
happy.
excited about that, but
Oh
I'm
my
happy to
god.
entertain it anyway.
No,
Um,
it's been wild because the Trump campaign just spent $65 million on anti-trans ads that are playing during football in like swing
cool.
states. It's yeah, so great, so awesome. So I've been dealing with all of that type of stuff. So
Yeah,
ah,
cool
elections
stuff.
upon us.
Yeah. Well, before without any further ado, let's take a quick look at last week's poll, um, which was, does inclusion of trans men in conversations about abortion detract from the feminist movement? Um, I'm not really surprised to see that the majority of our audience said no. We had a conversation, me and Ben last week, or the week before, um, about like how does this impact the trans movement in general? How does this impact feminism? I did not look and see what the 16% who said yes were saying. So as far as I know, that's a mystery. I neglected to follow up on this one.
Yeah, well, it looks like we had a lot of voters on this poll, which is a
True.
big deal. So that is interesting. I think a lot of the times, I think politicians and elected officials and also people who work in the reproductive justice movement are so trained just rhetorically to say women's rights and all of that type of stuff. Like, I've talked to activists that are like in their 80s that have been fighting for, women's liberation movements, for the lack of a better term, for their entire organizing lives. So
Mhm.
like to have that language shift when they have trained generations, plural, of activists that have been fighting for reproductive justice for a long time. I think it can be a little jarring for some folks to like say we're fighting for reproductive justice for all people who need, you know, reproductive access to health care and abortion care and things like that. And it's just like it's kind of like how people were getting used to they them and getting used to like trans and not transsexual and like it's just how I think how people speak, and because it takes a long time for rhetoric to shift over the movement as a whole, I think people get annoyed and they're like, we don't have time for that. We need to win this election now. And it can get really frustrating. But in reality, it's not that hard. Just like it's
Mhm.
not hard to say they, them, or it's, or whatever, you know, somebody wants to be regarded as, or saying trans woman instead of transsexual, and, you know, or cross dresser or whatever, right? You know, it's just the evolution of language, and it's up to our community to continue to be able to say we're fighting for reproductive justice across all people who need access to abortion care. See how easy that was? I didn't say birthing person once. Like, you know,
Yeah.
it's it's not difficult. So it's just about training organizers on how to speak, because the feminist movement as a whole, majority of them are like trans rights, trans women or women, right?
Mhm.
Femme presenting non-binary people need access to rights as well. Like all of those type of things are part of the feminist movement. And it's only a small sliver of folks who are TERFs and try to use feminism as a shield for their bigotry. So it's just
Yep.
going to take time.
Yeah, feminism is about gender equity, and feminists talk about issues that affect men, they talk about issues that affect women, and it's a natural progression for trans people to be included in that, and nobody's saying we need to stop saying women, we're stripping women of their identities in order to talk about reproductive care. Like, no, you can even say, like, women and all people affected by this. Like, I don't really get that whole, like, "You're erasing women" thing when, functionally what those type of activists are trying to do is completely erase trans men, who simply want to be included in conversations about this because, obviously, trans men are denied care and things like this when they're not included in this conversation. So it's not just, "We don't like it," it can actually tangibly
Yeah.
harm people.
And also trans men are less likely to go to a woman's health clinic
Yeah,
to
genuinely.
receive health care, right? Because of the stigma of getting your name called in a woman's health clinic, right?
Yeah.
Because it's called a woman's health clinic, right? And it's really unfortunate. So we have to evolve our language so people can get care and not be stigmatized for getting health care.
Yeah.
There's so much to it.
So, with that said, we do have a new poll for this week, and you all are going to have the ability to vote on it in the chat there. We have the one on the community page, and then we're going to have one in the chat for you to vote on, and we will discuss your answers in a little bit after a couple of calls. So, for this week, we want to discuss the subject: do you think that trans hormone care requires specialist oversight, even if the wait lists for specialists take several years and primary doctors have previously handled that care? The reason why we are asking this is because a letter was just sent out to folks on the UK NHS regarding hormone care. We're talking even people who've been diagnosed with gender dysphoria, they've gone through the process at the gender clinic, and their hormones have been monitored by their regular primary doctors for a long time. They're being taken off of that care at their GP. So it's like, a 6-month grace period. And then in order to continue getting hormones, you have to go back to the trans clinic, which, if you've caught up with anything going on in the UK, the wait time to get a first appointment is sometimes several years long. And that's just to get a first appointment to be evaluated for gender dysphoria. And obviously, like, this causes harm to people and everything. So we're not going to discuss it right this second, but wanted to give you that context so that you can vote and tell us whether you think that you require a specialist for that care. Um, and from there, I think we're basically ready to take our first call. What do you think, Josie?
Yeah, absolutely. And just remember to do super chats. And we have a new format that if whoever is the loser of the Team Josie Team Lux challenge will have to debate a silly topic for funsies. So yeah, so make sure you go in and put in Team Josie as we do the super chats.
If you think Josie does a good job.
What? Oh, why you had to add the qualifier? That
Well,
was
it's
unnecessary.
either who does a good job or who you want to see do the humiliating thing at the end. So, like, whichever one of us you want to put on the spot to have to defend a silly position for 2 minutes. So yes, super chats of $5 or more. We will read those out, and that's how you get your votes in. I would like to take Annalise to start with. So Annalise from Michigan wants to talk about being treated differently as an intersex trans person. Annalise, what's up? Lay it on us.
Hi. Um, I I'm trans intersex, and when I found out about that and started transitioning, um, I had to hear a lot of really weird things. So, like when I first started transitioning, I thought I had to go through the same kind of stuff that most trans women did, right? But no, the vast majority of people are like, oh, it wasn't your fault, and it's fine that you're changing, but others not. And I found that very strange because it's like I lived more than 30 years of my life as a man, and all of a sudden they're okay with it. But I knew trans people who were like 18, 19, 20, and they lived most of their lives as women, and they look more the part than I do. But they would treat me as if it's okay that I'm transitioning to female, but not them. And I described to them that, like, they had the same kind of feelings that I do. I always thought I was a girl. It just, I happened to find out I actually was, like, well, that's all biology. Like, I'm not too sure about that, but it's like they would treat the other trans girls I knew like crap, and they'd treat me like I'm just a regular girl. And I was very disturbed by that, to be honest. And I find this strange bigotry about the biology to be like one of the main things. Because like when you're talking about turfs earlier, it's like something I've seen with other turfs is they're terribly afraid of a quote unquote genetic man as if they are the horrible evil thing. But because I'm genetically female to them, then there's nothing wrong with me, despite the fact that I should have been quote unquote raised as a man and acted like a man. But I don't know, they're strange about it, and I figured that'd be something to bring up because I get treated different than other trans.
Yeah. And are you saying like who is the they? Like doctors, people who are outside of the trans community, other trans people, like
Pretty much everybody. Although some trans people actually get mad at me about it. They're like, "Oh, you're faking or something." I have to like show them the papers and stuff. It's like it shouldn't matter, but whatever. But and I'm like, it shouldn't make a difference. Like I'm just as trans as every other trans person. I shouldn't be treated any different. But at the same time, you shouldn't be treating them different from me either. They're just other men or women who want to be themselves. And it disturbs me that people are so grounded in this thought process of, it's biology. So yeah, it's basically everybody, doctors included. Because when I went to transition, because it's a long story, but I found out, from going to get a prostate exam that I'm not normal down there. And they're like, yeah, let's do some testing. Like, oh yeah. It's like, well, great. So I guess I can transition, not feel bad about it. Like, okay, so here's some hormones. I'm like, wait, I don't have to like go through all the process. Like, no, you're fine. And so it's very strange that I was like fast tracked and everything I wanted to do as soon as I proved that I was quote unquote intersex, but other trans people have to go through all this other extra steps or, informed consent and stuff, and they're just nah, here you go.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it seems like you walk a fine line between how cis people are treated with gender affirming care versus how trans people are treated in gender affirming care. Because, like, it's the same for cis people, right? Like, if a cis woman needs a vaginoplasty because they have some genetic condition that doesn't allow them to have like the depth or whatever they need to live, their normal life is as with as a vagina haver, then it's very easily done. There's no like psychological exam required. It's like, okay, we'll get you in, we'll have the appointment, we'll do it. It's very similar for like a cis man who has low testosterone. It's like, oh yeah, here's your testosterone, no specialist required, here you go. Like this is simple type stuff. And it seems like you are put into that category in the medical community. It's like, oh, you're intersex, so therefore we're going to go ahead and just give you all the care that you require for you to live happily. But when you are trans, you are given that extra barrier. Where it's like, if you're trans, it's like, oh my gosh, like you were assigned this at birth, like you can't have this, like you have to go through all of the hoops and hurdles to make that happen. And I think that it gives you a very unique perspective. And I know it's pretty annoying that you have to deal with people who are like who are being not kind to you because they're comparing your transitional history with their own, or cis people are like, oh, this is the way you were supposed to be. It sounds like you're like in an old creaky castle.
Yeah, it sounds like you're wrestling a rusty Gundam. Can we stop whatever that sound is?
Yeah, that's like there's like a rusty door or a gate that you're dealing with there. Sorry,
I just lost myself.
Okay, no, it's fine. So essentially, where you stand, you are able to kind of say, look, I was just given gender affirming care without all of the hoops that trans people need to go through. And you can use your experience as, a trans person can receive this health care. It's very pertinent to the way our poll question was about having specialists to be able to get this care. But I think that it puts you in a very unique position to be able to talk about this. And it also puts you in a very unique position as a trans intersex person, because not everybody who's intersex is trans. So you also have a megaphone to be able to speak about how you are intersex, you have trans experience because you were assigned male at birth and you were raised this way. So therefore your experience is unique. And as a trans intersex person, you're able to speak even more clearly about what the trans intersex experience is, because there's more intersex people who don't have trans experience than there are the other way around. So yeah, that's what I would think about. But it seems very unfortunate that people are singling you out as different when you are kind of like a bridge to kind of tell people like, no, my healthcare was easy to get, so should everybody's. But Lux, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's really silly for people to treat folks different based on any genetic difference. Like, we all, fundamentally, the experience that we share, and I usually hit this point when I'm talking about non-binary people and binary trans people, but like the fundamental experience that we all share is that we were assigned a gender that we don't vibe with. So like, wherever it is that our transition takes us, we all are dealing with like this thing that was imposed or inflicted on us when we were younger. And I think that's even more so the case for intersex trans people or intersex people as a whole, because a lot of the times, like, y'all were surgically altered as children without consent, or doctors did things without informing your parents, like, so I kind of see that as being the more like coercively assigned a gender. But yeah, I mean, it just seems silly.
I had full on surgery when I was a kid, so it really sucked.
Yeah, and it seems like you kind of found out as an adult, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry you had to go through all of that. And honestly, like, your experience as a trans intersex person is a very illustrative one. It allows people to kind of see like what it's like to walk that line of being treated as a cis person in the medical exam room, but as a trans person, you're not being able to relate with a lot of the struggles and barriers that trans people also have to deal with as well. And I think that you are a good spokesperson to the experience, because I think that there's still so little known about trans intersex experience. And so I really appreciate that you stand your ground and are like, no, my trans siblings deserve this healthcare and don't take away my transness.
Yeah, because they deserve it too. And I've even told other people, like, I understand exactly how dysphoria works. I went through it for 30 plus years of my life. And if you want to say that, you know, trans people don't know what they are, you want to continue, quote unquote, cis person. But I experienced dysphoria having to live as a guy. And that's not fair to then put that on other people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think it's like a universal experience to some extent. Like, cis people experience gender dysphoria sometimes, intersex people do, trans people do. Like, I think that this is, you know, one of the things that we should acknowledge that we have in common, as opposed to like focusing on what's different. Like, just because the distance between like what I am and what I want to be as a trans person is greater than the distance between like what a cis woman wants for herself. Like, just because she's closer to it doesn't mean that it's not the same feeling, basically. And then, like, of course, the whole being intersex thing complicates it quite a lot. But yeah, I do think it's important to talk about that. It's like, we should not be gatekeeping dysphoria. We should not be jealous of each other. Like, just because some doctors like give you preferential treatment because they're like, oh, well, your feelings are natural. You have a genetic thing. Therefore, of course, I'm going to give you this medicine. Like, that's not your fault as an intersex person. That's the fault of the bias that medicine has.
That's the funny thing, because when I tried getting it before then, they're like, no, you got to go through all these hoops.
Yeah.
And then, you know, 10 plus years later, it's like, oh yeah, you're actually a girl, so here you go. It's bullshit.
Yeah.
It's dumb.
That's unfortunate. Well, Annalise, thanks for talking through that with us. I hope it was helpful. You know, I think that you're awesome, and I appreciate you sharing with us your story, because I think your story is very important to share, especially with our own audience here who don't understand the trans intersex experience. So we really appreciate you sharing that with us today.
Thanks. And thanks for having me on.
Yeah, appreciate you, Annalise. Have a good rest of your day.
All right. You too. Bye.
Bye.
All right. So
we
real
ready
quick,
for... Yes,
we're not going to take Matthew just yet. We're going to take a brief moment to do announcements.
Matthew. We see
you, Matthew. We're going to talk to you.
Don't go away.
So first of all, I want to say, if you haven't already hit the like button on the stream, please do that. It's quick, it's easy, it's free. It immediately helps the show. You can also subscribe to make sure you get updates and everything, like with the bell and all that. Consider joining through the memberships to get away from the slow chat. And also to directly support the show, if you can join the Patreon to get in the end credits at the end of the show, or you can do your super chats. So just as a reminder, super chats, $5 or more, we read them all out at the end of the show. And with your $5 super chats, you can vote #Team Josie or #Team Lux. And the one who gets the fewest votes has to do a punishment at the end. It's just a fun little no stakes punishment thing. We're having fun with it. So we'll have you vote too on what the punishment is specifically going to be. So we're going to take at least one more caller, and then we'll talk about your answers to the poll for today. So just a reminder, check out the poll. You can look at the one in the chat. And then if you want to type a little explanation, you can go to the community tab. But yes, with all that said, are we ready to move on? Oh yeah, we also have a bunch of other shows on the network, but none of them are really scheduled for this week. So check back basically every day of the week.
Yeah, so many great shows.
So many good shows.
So many good shows.
It's been a hell of a month. We're kind of lagging behind on some things, but that's okay.
Yeah, we are. Yes.
So yeah, if we're ready, I'm prepared for Matthew. Are you ready?
Are you prepared? I'm strapped in. I'm ready to go. Let's go.
All right, let's go. Matthew from Ohio, who's a repeat caller, wants to say something about how gender-affirming care should not be considered at all when we're talking about treating gender dysphoria. So Matthew, welcome back to the show. How are you doing today?
Fine and well. Hey, Luxander. Hey, Josie. How are you guys doing?
Pretty solid.
Doing well. Yes.
Good. Hope you guys, glad you guys are doing a little bit better.
Yeah,
all
thank
right.
you. Yeah.
On the road to recovery. Thank you.
Yeah. So So I took
What do you want to talk about?
some time, and I spent some time looking at other literature when it comes to transgender issues and stuff like that. So I'm coming from this mindset. But throughout, I don't know if you guys, and you guys probably don't like this guy, I don't know, but Turbin is his last name. I think it's Jake, or I forgot his first name. I listened to his book about
Jake. Yeah,
gender.
I know Jake Turbin. I actually have worked with him on
Yeah.
research before.
Okay, cool. So he's not a bad faith person or whatever. That's good to know.
No, he's a doctor.
I listened to him, and as I was listening to him, he was talking about gender affirming care, and we would agree. I think the three of us would agree that gender affirming care is not just puberty blockers and hormones. It actually, at this base level, starts off with social transitioning. Is that correct?
Sure.
Yeah,
I think that's fair.
in most cases. Yeah, you usually start with the
right.
least evasive stuff, and then you go down the
Correct.
ladder of more evasive care.
Correct. So that's what when I think of gender affirming care, I think of just that being the kind of less invasive starting point. And I look at that and I consider myself, I have OCD, and this is going somewhere. If I was to require society, every store, to have hand sanitizers and sandy wipes and every single, as soon as you walk in, they would have to basically participate in my care. And I would feel elated, right? I would feel better. I would have a better quality of life because I know that everywhere I go, I'll be able to wipe things down and clean things and whatnot. And so, but just because that I would feel better does not mean that that's the appropriate approach for my treatment. And also, when it comes to gender affirming care, social transitioning is almost the same, if not exactly the same way, where people have to accept the idea that this person who we once knew as a male or a female is now, okay, the opposite gender, or the gender that we're not accustomed to accepting them as. And so we're going to have to be also participants in their care. And I don't think that we should be forced to be participants in their care. For example, if you have a parent or a family member that says, hey, look, let's not use gender language in this home, I can see that being more reachable. But to get all of society to say, oh, yeah, this person has to accept that this person is transitioning or wants to be identified as this, I don't think that is appropriate.
Okay, I want to jump on a couple of things really quick. So first of all, I'm not super familiar with OCD. I suspect that I might also have it, but there are like tiers of things that are like reasonable for you to be kind of nervous about, and things that are not reasonable.
Mhm.
And my local Walmart does have hand sanitizer and sanitary like wipes for when you get in the store.
Yeah, so
and
let me
hold on, no,
give you an OCD perspective for that. Okay, please go ahead.
Hold on.
Because the thing is that
Yeah.
Matthew, hold on.
I literally have COVID right now. Like, so we do still, like, that is a reasonable, I wouldn't say necessarily it's an accommodation for your OCD specifically, but it is like a reasonable thing to provide to people in general. And if it happens to make your OCD feel better, that's fine. But the other thing that I want to push back on is this idea that we're forcing people to participate in trans folks' identities, because that's the transformative power of hormones, is that most people just start naturally gendering us the way that we want to be gendered. It's not like we're strong-arming people. It's not like we're holding a gun to them and being like, you have to. But there was a classic Old West trans man who did do that, and he was the GOAT. But it's like, I don't really see like the idea that we're forcing society to adjust to us. Like, in fact, trans people most of the time just have to bite it when people are not accepting. You have the occasional "it's ma'am" video that goes viral because trans people aren't allowed to get upset. But I'm just not really seeing this. Like, it just seems like a concern that is being manufactured. This idea that we're forcing anybody to accommodate whatever. You know, most of us just politely stop associating with people who aren't accommodating of our genders. Let Josie come in real quick.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, let me jump in really quick, Matthew. So I also disagree with your premise, right? Because the idea is, when you socially transition, you go into the world, you're literally just saying, I'm going to put on my feeling that makes me feel good. Sometimes it's going out in a bra. Sometimes it's, going out in a dress, fixing your hair differently. There's a lot of different things that happen. But no one in society is sitting there saying, oh, Josie came out yesterday. I hope you know, you better be nice and da 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 da. Some people are friendly like that, and they will be like, yeah, let's be nice. Let's not do that. But it's all kind of just that awkward stages of doing things, and there's a line, right? And I think this is where you were getting at before, is like having to respect people in public. It's like there's a line of like, I go to the store when I'm early in transition and the cashier says sir instead of ma'am, right? That happened. It happened to me when I was early in my transition. And I'm just like, ugh. And then the person looked at me and like, oh, this girl's like wearing full makeup and a freaking vest. I apologize, right? They were just like, damn, they said what they did, but whatever. And there's a difference between that and I going to that cashier and being like, hey, it's actually, I'm early in my transition, I don't go by sir, whatever, blah, 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 blah. And then that person saying, I don't give a fuck. I'm going to call you that, whatever you want, right? Like I'm going to call you sir. And there's a line between it being harassment and being like, oh, I have to be accepting to this person and be polite, right? In polite society, right, which I hope that you would agree, we should, as somebody who is a traditionalist, you would think that it's polite to be nice to people and not get in their faces and tell people that they're wrong, right? And so if you see a person on the street, a random stranger wearing a dress, and you're just like, oh, that, and let's say they're, clocky, and you're like, oh, I can tell that that person's a trans person, you wouldn't go to them and be like, hey, you look awful in that dress and you should probably just stick with pants, right? And that's harassment, right? Like, if you were to do that to a random person just walking the street who isn't trans and saying, your purple hair looks like shit and you should really not wear that, right? Like, regardless of whatever their gender is, because that's harassment, right? Like, so nobody is saying, Matthew, you better freaking be nice to trans people because they're gonna get you, right? Like, there's no rule like that. So I don't understand where your premise is coming from.
Well, I'll explain. I'll get a little bit deeper, but just for the to Luxander's point of the OCD thing, sometimes people use that sandy white thing as a trash can sometimes, and it can get really gross. So I have to bring my own wipes or I use the paper towels, but I have to bring my own alcohol and sanitizer. That's neither here nor there.
Right. I do want to ask something before you get back into it, because something occurred to me while Josie was talking. Do you take issue with the ADA requirement for places to be wheelchair accessible?
No,
like the Americans with Disabilities Act.
I want to get to that idea because I see where you're going, and those are things I considered as well.
So you think that certain things should be accommodated and other things shouldn't?
Right, and like you even said with the hand sanitizer thing, I think that's reasonable. So my point with the reasonableness is like, even that being reasonable, I still don't feel comfortable demanding that they have that as somebody who has OCD and is being treated for it.
Okay, continue.
Okay. Yes. So, what Josie was saying, let's say that situation happened in the grocery store, but nobody is saying like, bleep you, I don't care about this. You just say it's ma'am, and so the person says, I'm sorry, I see you as a male. I can't refer to you as she. Josie, if somebody was to do that to you, would that be problematic or considered harassment?
If they continue to do it on purpose, right? Like there's a way to be able to say, okay, this person's just an asshole and will just be, and there's like battles that you want to fight. But if like all of a sudden I say, please don't call me sir, and they're like, okay, sir, yes, sir, whatever, sir, I don't see that, sir. It's like nobody talks to anybody like that, right? And then
nobody talks like that. So
exactly, but do you see what I'm talking about? Like the harassment line versus somebody just being
so what
an
I'm
asshole
asking,
that I never have to see again.
Would it be harassment if someone says, I'm not going to refer to you as he. I'm not going to use your pronouns he or she, her. I'm not going to use those pronouns. I'm not going to refer to you as she. I'm going to refer to you as he.
Matthew, do you feel like it would be harassment if you politely asked someone to use their hand sanitizer because you have OCD and they were like, it's all in your head, it's fake, you're fine, you don't need hand sanitizer? Like, Do you understand that, like, that's rude?
I think it'd be a bit rude, but I still can't expect them to do that. I'd be like, well, carry on. You know, I can't be like, oh, how dare you, or I can't be upset with
But it
them.
would
Like I
bother
can't.
you. But it's
It
a
would bother
rude
me.
thing
Yeah,
to do. Yeah, so that's the
yeah,
same
it would be
thing,
rude.
right? Like a
But
trans
let's
person
say
who's
the
just trying
person
to live
says,
their life and go to the grocery store, all of a
uh,
sudden approaches some rude person who's just being a jerk. It's like, yeah, that sucks.
mm,
Like, you know, if they're
or,
continuing to be a jerk and they're going to say,
mm,
"Oh, I don't believe in that. I believe you're a biological male and all that type of stuff." And as I'm trying to check out, they continue to try to debate me on why I'm a male. I might say, you know, that man to the manager, like, that person's a fucking dick, right? Like, just like, you know, that I may do that, right? Or I would just be like, yeah,
mm,
this person, whatever, right? Like, it depends on the line, right, of that is being
yeah,
crossed. Because, like, just like if you were, you know, if you were at a restaurant and somebody was like, no, I'm not going to wash my hands to handle your food, you asshole. Like, no, I'm a clean person. Like, you should just
yeah.
deal
But
with
we
it.
keep
You would be like, whoa, like, I'm going to talk to the manager. This person doesn't believe in hand sanitizer for food.
right,
Like, you
right.
know, it's the same type of thing, right? You would be so annoyed that you may call a manager and be like, hey, I can't eat my food right now because I have OCD and I know that that employee didn't wash their hands when I watched them walk out of the bathroom. Right? Like, you
Oh
know,
boy.
you'd
Hmm.
be sussed out, right? It's the same type of
Yeah.
situation when you're in society
Well, that's
as a
what
trans person.
that's what I'm saying. We're eliminating the jerk, right? We're eliminating the wicked person that's doing these things. We're talking about people who we hope in the polite society are saying, I see you want to be called, and this is kind of where I am, and this is where I mean, you probably would call me a bigot, but I'm more on the side of compassion, right? Like I see you want to be called this, but there's also another class of people that were called this way before then. So and they have certain things that they need accommodation for, and so I don't feel comfortable calling you a she.
Matthew,
And would
I have
that be a
I have
problem?
pushed back on this before, Matthew. Trans people have existed for as long as human beings have had written or oral history. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many times I need to go over this with you. You're like, well, these other
Mm-hmm.
people were called women first. Like, okay, well, like, do we want to talk about the ancient Scythian society who would castrate themselves and then drink female horse urine in order to feminize themselves? Like,
Mhm.
ancient orders of
Well, I'm not necessarily
priestesses.
talking about. I hear what you're saying, Luxander, but I'm not
You're
necessarily talking
not
about that.
hearing
I'm
what I'm
talking about
saying because
somebody.
we've had this conversation more than once. Trans people have existed for as long as our concept of gender has existed. So why do you think that we should not get acknowledgement because you just personally believe that we shouldn't? Like, if you're going to make the argument that one group has existed for longer than the other, you're wrong. And therefore, that part of your argument is moot. And so the next thing you're going to do is just
Okay,
move to
that's
another position because you can't defend that
well.
position.
Well, I would say that that part of my argument is not the reason why I came to the conclusion, right? The reason why I came to the conclusion was my main part of the argument, which is if somebody says, "Hey, I don't feel comfortable calling you she. I feel comfortable maybe even calling you by your name, but I don't feel comfortable calling you she." Ought that person not be okay to do that?
It's not
I mean, they
polite
can
to
be
do
a
that.
dick.
You're allowed to be rude. Yes, Josie is about to say you're allowed to be a dick. Like, you're allowed to be rude to people. People are allowed to tell you that your OCD is all in your head and you're crazy and you need to stop living in society if you don't want to get sick all the time, right? But like, that's not the kind of world that I want to live in. Like, I don't know about you, Matthew. I don't want to live in a world where people just like are confrontational all the time about basic stuff.
Yeah, and Matthew,
But
and
I don't think. Yeah.
it comes back to the layer thing, right? About when it borderlines harassment. Now, if you work with this person, right,
Hmm.
and you
Yeah.
are a coworker and that person refuses to see you who you are, that is harassment, right? That is like they continue to disrespect me. They don't want to acknowledge who I am. I'm working through this thing in my life and I want to be able to be treated that way, because that then becomes discriminatory. It becomes harassment. It becomes a hostile work environment. And we have laws on the books that actually say you're not allowed to do that, right? Like that is kind of how it is. But a random stranger in the street, like Lux said, is like, yeah, there's going to be assholes on the street that are going to exist, and we can't control and we can't thought police. And that's the thing. Trans people are not trying to thought police people to say, oh my gosh, I'm walking in the world as a trans person. If people don't even see me in their head and misgender me in my head, I want them all, put in prison, and I want them to no longer be able to exist in society. That's not the case, because trans people are thinking about that way more than you are, Matthew. Like, as a trans person that's especially new to transitioning is walking through that grocery store or walking to that store, they're thinking everybody here knows that I'm trans and I'm super anxious and I don't like it and it's making me feel upset because everybody's staring at me, and because it's in our head, just like OCD, right? It's just like we're all just like, oh my God, this is awful, this is awful, this is awful. But we do it because it makes us feel better. And over time, like Lux said, eventually with hormones, with getting better presentation, with all the different things that happen, people just gender us the way we want. Right? I have not been misgendered in public, and this is my passing privilege speaking, so I apologize if this triggers anybody, but I have not been misgendered in public by somebody, a complete stranger, in probably 2 to 3 years, right? Because I have been able to live my life and be able to have access to healthcare. I've been privileged to be able to have all of those things that allow me to walk through life like this, right? And so for me, Matthew, it's like there are people in the world that are trying to transvestigate me and probably trying to say, oh my gosh, that's Josie the trans woman, I'm gonna call her a man. That probably exist and will probably happen a lot at some point in my life, especially when I get more in the public life and run for office. But in reality, like, that isn't something that a lot of trans people don't have to worry about, because most people in society don't even look at people's faces and they only look at the clothes that they're wearing. So nobody is prescribing that, oh my gosh, society better treat me this way or they're going to be in for it, because trans people don't actually live that way. So the premise doesn't make sense, right?
So there's a man that goes out there. You guys would probably think he's bad faith. I don't know, but I do think that in the trans ideology, he's right to do what he's doing. And what he does is he dresses up as a woman. He claims to be trans, whether he is or not, I do not know. And he goes, he has these videos, and he's at a restaurant, and he goes, "You call me ma'am, sir," when it's ma'am, and that's like a knife to the heart and stuff like that. And he is expecting people to call
trans.
him.
They're not a man. That person is actually trans, and just because some viral person went online is like, oh, I'm gonna be going and doing this thing, doesn't represent the entire trans community. In fact, a lot of the trans community has been critical of this person for creating those videos and trying to get workers and service workers in trouble, because they're just being like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you said that. When most trans people deal with this on a daily basis, we don't go and try to make a viral moment out of it, right? We just say, hey, we correct you. We just move on with our lives. So like, that's just one person. It's just one person.
Why should we get in trouble though? Like, and why should those servers get in trouble? And is it okay for me to call that person a man?
They probably didn't get in trouble. First off, they were like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, ma'am."
What I'm saying is, why should they be threatened? Okay, better yet. Okay, I fear. Why should they be threatened to be getting in trouble? Or is it okay for me to call that person a man?
What do you mean? What is it okay to call that person a man? What are you saying right now?
Yeah,
I don't already tread this ground.
For me,
we've already said
for me to call
rude.
that person a man.
It's acceptable for you to be rude, because it's like not legally actionable for you to be rude, right?
Yeah,
it just is rude.
You can be
if you're in a customer service situation and you're rude to your customers, you're gonna get in trouble. Like, I don't understand what's so complicated about that. Like,
so are they not getting in trouble, or are they getting in trouble?
We don't know. Your premise here is that they could be getting in trouble. Like, I don't know. I haven't seen the videos in specific, right? But like, some people are considering this like a type of rage bait, and like, yes, people do that. Cisgender and transgender people do rage bait. It's a thing that happens online. It's unfortunate. But like, the premise of your question here is like, it's built on this like scary idea that you might actually have some kind of negative social ramification for being rude to trans people. Like, that's what this is coming down to. You're like, you like have this belief that you should be able to say whatever you want to trans people, no matter how rude it is. And if there is a social ripple effect where people think that you're an asshole for doing that, that's somehow a bad thing.
Yeah.
Is it a
It's
bad
just a
thing?
society.
Yes, it's bad to be rude. I guess maybe you have a moral position that being
Yeah.
rude is a positive thing for society, but I personally believe that it's bad to be rude for again,
So
you're being confrontational. That's
what?
the thing. It's generally considered
Mhm.
bad for social cohesion for individuals to be confrontational for no good reason.
Even trans
So
people.
why is it? Mhm. So
Even
I wouldn't
trans
consider this
people
person
are
a friend, and
confrontational.
not. I wouldn't consider this person a friend, and not because I don't like them. I just don't think that we've had a good relationship. But there's a trans person that I know that I said, look, I don't feel comfortable calling you she. I will use they them, but they still insist that I call them she, and they say that it's insulting that I don't call them she. So is
Yeah,
that
that's
a
rude.
Because
problem?
you were going. Yeah, that is rude.
You're misgendering or degendering that person. Yes, it's rude. It's just as rude as calling them he him.
Matthew, if you had
What?
somebody
Mm,
that was like, I'm going to call you Matt, right?
mhm.
And you're like, no, I prefer Matthew. And that person's like, no, I'm going to call you Matt because you look like a Matt to me. Would you be like, whatever? Or would you be like, that's kind of weird?
I'd probably say it's kind of weird. I'd be a little bit of both.
Exactly.
Whatever. They're kind of weird. I was like, okay, sure. But the thing is,
But
with the
but that's the
whole,
same thing you're doing to somebody when you take
I
their
don't think
gender
I
away
don't
from
think it's the
them.
same
That's
thing.
super weird.
You're
But it's
denying
being
them
super
I don't.
weird.
the way
I
that they
don't.
want to be called, and it's super weird. Like, we don't really think
Yeah.
I
about you
don't
that
think it's
much,
the same
Matthew.
thing.
Okay, well,
Pardon?
if I decide to start calling you she, do you think that's not the same?
Is that not
I
weird?
would think that is. I would say that's different.
Is it?
I mean, but
Why?
I'm not going to lose sleep over it though. But if you
Yeah,
call me she, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. But
to be honest, we don't think about you
I
that much. Like, you, the person
Yeah.
who decides to degender us or misgender us, like, we don't ultimately think about you that much. We just think that you're rude and weird. Like,
Yeah.
that's
And we
why does
just
it
won't
literally
have?
be
the end of
friends
it.
with
So
you.
let
Because
me
we
give
won't
it.
be friends with you. Like, that's how it works.
Right.
Like honestly, if I had a
Mm,
friend, and I've lost friends already because of my transition, who were like, "Oh,
mhm.
I'm only going to see you as he because that's who you used to be and everything." Guess what? I'm not their friend anymore because they're
Well, that's not what
rude
I said.
and mean
I said
and
I don't feel
weird.
comfortable calling you she. I
And
don't feel
that
comfortable
person
calling you
probably isn't
she.
gonna be a
I don't
good friend
mind.
anymore, are they? Are they a good friend to you? Do they call you? Do they say, "Oh, Matthew, I want to hang out tonight"? No, they probably don't, do they? That relationship has
No, we're
probably
not.
been kind of fraught. Exactly, right? And whose fault is
Well,
that,
we were
Matthew?
never friends like that in the first place. I'm just saying we met
Well, there
online, so
you
we're never friends
go.
like that in the first place. But I'm
Well,
just saying, like,
then this example is irrelevant then. Right?
I think you can
Because
meet good friends online. My
if it was an actual friend, you might respect their wishes. But since it's just some faceless
mm,
online person, you don't respect their wishes, so
I
therefore
don't look at
that
people like that
friendship doesn't
online. I think
matter to you.
That's what this all comes back
But
I
to,
don't
that
believe in
Matthew.
the
It's
whole rando online
disrespectful.
thing. I don't believe in the whole
Hold on, Matthew, real
rando.
quick.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
The problem here is that it's
Mm,
disrespectful. And like, so if I decide that your name is Rachel and I'm going to call you she
mm,
her, you might not think about that too deeply. You'll be like, okay, that's weird. If I continue to do it, and if you say, hey, yo, actually my name's Matthew, and I'm like, yeah, Rachel, I will definitely remember that for next time, Rachel, and then I keep doing it, it's like overtly disrespectful because I know what you want to be called and I won't do it. Like, you have made
yeah, I probably
your
just won't, to be
wishes
fair, I probably just
clear.
won't talk to you
Stop
anymore.
interrupting, Matthew.
Um,
It's starting to get really fucking
yeah.
annoying. It is rude because it is disrespectful. And again, there's no law that says you can't be disrespectful to other people, but it is disrespectful. And this is getting away from whatever your original thing that you were supposed to call in about. Like, this is not about like gender affirming care anymore. It's about, you're like, I've decided that there should be zero social consequences for me disrespecting people overtly, directly to their face. That's what you're saying
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah, Matthew, and it's not
sorry.
putting you in a good light, right? Like if you think about it like honestly, right? You just admitted that you had a person that you considered a friend online that you have no longer really good friends with because you decided that they don't go, I'm not going to do she, I'm going to do they, and that person's like, you know what, I'm not staying friends with Matthew anymore. The reality is you're not the victim here, right? The reality
That's
is,
not why we're not really close friends.
well, I'm sure that's part of it though. Like, you know, and
Okay.
in reality, it's like you're not the victim here, right? Like at the end of the day, people who are trying to live their lives, going through the world, living their, you know, just trying to be just faceless people on the street, living their lives, going to the grocery store, going to restaurants, doing whatever, living their lives. Those people are thinking about their own lives. You need to think about your own life. And just because somebody says, hey, Matthew, I actually go by she, not he, and then you're just like, well, that sucks. I don't like that feeling that I'm feeling inside of my chest. I don't want to be nice to this person. Doesn't make you the victim, right? Like,
So
you just need to
this is
be
what
able
I
to
mean.
live in society.
It seems to me, and I do apologize for speaking over anyone. It's just how I converse, like where I'm just talking. I feel like a natural conversation. I do apologize if I'm talking over somebody, but it doesn't. What I mean here is, I'm not. The examples you guys are giving. You guys are saying these people are automatically rude or wicked or a bad person.
I'm not saying
when a
wicked or
person
rude. I'm just saying they're a dick.
So
That's
or
it.
ick or whatever it is, the person feels uncomfortable. They may have their reasons. They may feel like in society for them, they, even if less gender is a social construct, they've been constructed to know what a she her is, and they say, you know, this is the category of she her. This is the category of he him. I just don't feel comfortable calling you he him. Can we compromise? Maybe they them or
No.
something like that. Like somebody lost their
No,
keys or
because
you
you
lost.
don't compromise on your name, Matthew. We don't compromise on you being Rachel. It's like, okay, fine, you know, maybe it's not Rachel, it's Rach. All right, I'll call you Rach. Right? Like you know, like there is no compromise to our lived experience and our identity, right? We're not asking you to move the world for us. We're not asking you, Matthew, I want you to solve transphobia for me, please, by calling me she, her. Nobody's asking you to do that. All we are asking is just don't be a dick. And if you want to be a dick in society and not have friends with trans people, that's your choice. But society's moving on without you. And I don't care if somebody says, but feminine people, let's say they're raised Pentecostal in the traditional way, and they're like, but feminine people wear long skirts and long hair that they don't cut, and they go to church every Sunday, and then they have families. And if you're not that, then you're not a woman to me. Sorry, society has moved long
That's an
past
extreme, Josie. No one's doing that.
that. But
yeah, they do.
Yeah, they do. There are people who
No
do
one's gonna
that.
no Pentecostal, and that person may need help too. That no one's gonna say,
Well,
"Oh,
that's what
I'm
we're saying,
Pentecostal."
Matthew.
So,
Matthew,
pardon?
I was raised Pentecostal. So Matthew,
Okay.
look, like
So no, okay,
all
Josie.
I'm trying
Real
to
quick,
say
Josie.
is
Real quick,
society
Josie.
moves on.
You were raised Pentecostal, right? You said you were raised Pentecostal.
I was raised.
The people that you were raised
I
with,
was
right?
raised Catholic into a Pentecostal household. Yes.
That's fine. The people that you were raised with, let's say a man in the church that you were raised with, that's the starkest Pentecostal person there. He's going to see a woman on the street who doesn't wear a short skirt, and he's not going to refer to them as a woman. He's going to say that they're not female or she, her. He's not going to say she.
I don't know what society you're from, Matthew, but it has happened my entire life. Like, do you remember, I don't know how old you are, Matthew, but do you remember back when
35.
Hillary, okay, cool. We're in the same age range. So back when Hillary Clinton was really active in politics, do you not remember people saying that she was secretly a man because she was going outside of the, hold on, because she was going outside of the acceptable parameters for women's behavior by being assertive and being powerful and wearing pants. Like, people do genuinely do this where they're like, yeah, well, I'm going to say that you're actually a man because like no woman would do that.
That's not.
It's not a joke. People really do believe that.
It's not going to refer to. Okay, maybe I'm those people are delusional then.
I mean,
evolved now.
look what they do to Michelle. Think about what they do to Michelle Obama. Like,
or Iman Khalif.
Literally. Arman Khalif or like people who are literally cis women and they literally call them men because of whatever reason that they have. Like Matthew, we all know that weird people exist and weird people are going around just trying to gender people the way that they want rather than just being members of polite society and just like say, hey, I'm just going to move on the way to do. But I am going to say we've been talking to you for 30 minutes. So we are going to have to move on. But Matthew, all we are saying is you are not the victim when a trans person says, hey, refer to me by this such and such pronoun, or please see me as the whatever gender that I am. Like, and I'm sorry that it feels like it hurts. I'm sorry that you get that sting in your chest when you find out that a person is trans and you're just like, ugh, I don't want to respect their trans identities. Like, you have to look past that, because if you were to say, Matthew, if you were to tell me, hey, Josie, before I shake your hand, can you put hand sanitizer on? I'd be like, absolutely, Matthew, sure, why not? Right? I would absolutely do that, and I would not even bat an eye. Right. And so because I am a polite person and I want to make sure that your boundaries are respected as I speak to you, just like I don't call you Rachel, just like I don't gender you as they, them, I respect you and we have these conversations. And that's all we ask as trans people is just respect us. Right.
Well,
like just that's all we're asking.
I would say you guys are proving my point throughout this whole entire conversation when you assume malintent to somebody who does not want to.
You don't have to have malintent. That's the thing. Is like you believe fundamentally that trans people, like you cannot exhibit a gender that is different from the sex that you were assigned at birth, right? Like that is your fundamental belief, and we are telling you that that's not how society works. Society grants you basically full access to the gender role that you want to have access to once you transition, because most of us transition and we look the way that we want to look, right? No one is strong-arming anyone. No one is forcing anyone. And your belief that you can't occupy a gender that is different from the thing that you were assigned at birth is outdated. It is incorrect. It's anti-science, and it's rude and disrespectful. So the fact that you think it's so silly that someone would say Hillary Clinton is really secretly a man or Michelle Obama is really secretly a man, like that is so ridiculous to you that you have said, well, they must be joking or they must be delusional. I'm sorry that your position is also lumped in with them, because that's how things are going. Like, because trans people have been studied for like 100 years. We've been providing all kinds of different care. We've tried to treat trans people like they're delusional. We've tried to treat trans people like they have psychosis. We've tried to treat trans people with antidepressants. And it turns out that we just are trans, and transition is the thing that helps us, A, feel better in our own bodies and minds, and B, socially assimilate and integrate. And it's like, it's much less controversial than you want it to be, basically. Like you feel like there should be zero social repercussions for calling trans people the thing that we aren't. Like most people, like if you were to say Blair White, yeah, I need to, I'm going to meet Blair White and go have dinner with her. And you walk up to the host of the restaurant and you say, yeah, I'm looking for a man in an orange shirt. Everyone around you, when you point out Blair White is the man you're talking to, they're going to think that you're crazy because your view is outdated. And I'm not really sure what we're doing when we have these conversations, Matthew. I appreciate having the opportunity to tear into you.
That's what you do when you have them.
I'm proving your point that, like, I don't know, man. Like, society is leaving you behind.
Yeah, Matthew. So you're telling me
nobody wants to be attributed
like maybe 5
malintent.
different conversations with you. So we've had 5 different conversations with you, and you know, and we are spending a lot of time with you on this call. You saying we reaffirm your point every time we have a conversation with you. So you're saying in that one infamous call that are getting a lot of views on YouTube, whatever, that we had a long time ago, when I said that some women have penises and some don't, and that some trees have coconuts and some don't. Yeah. Like, you're saying that conversation proved your point?
Yeah, that if you see it on the short feed. Like if you put it in your echo chamber on the line show, it's gonna obviously people are gonna be upset about that because that's just that localized.
I think what you're doing, Matthew, I think what you're doing is this thing that many religious people do, which is you go on purpose to talk to people who are going to challenge your beliefs. And then when you're challenged and we're mean to you, you run back to your echo chamber and you go and research things that are specifically going to reaffirm your position. And you're using us to reinforce your beliefs because we have consistently.
You guys, first of all, let me explain. You guys have not been mean to me. I think you guys to allow me to even take a deep breath in a vat like this. To me, I'm very appreciative. I don't want you to guys think that you're mean to me at all. I do think you're a little bit off. Yeah, I think you're a little bit off. I think you're incorrect. But definitely, I don't think you guys are mean, and I don't attribute hate or anything like that, what you guys do. But I would say real quick, you guys do affirm my point when you have these conversations, just because, let me tell you, nobody wants to be attributed malintent, right? But when you say, hey, the person says, I don't feel comfortable calling you he or she, right? And then
you don't feel comfortable
being rude, or that
respecting
means
trans
you're being
people. Like if it's the same thing, if I were to say, listen, I understand that you're a man and you live with a man and you you're trying to adopt kids and you kiss each other or whatever, but I don't acknowledge that that's your husband. It's just uncomfortable for me to acknowledge that that's your husband. That's rude. And it is socially affirmed by some people, but most people are on the side of like, yeah, it's rude to call the wedding a celebration. That actually happened within my family. 2 women got married and our older family members were like, oh yeah, are you going to the celebration? It's like, it's a fucking wedding. Like, it's rude. And you don't have to be having ill intent in order to still be rude. Like this happens with like autistic people versus non-autistic people all the time. Social norms have moved on to where like, if you say, I'm just not comfortable, excuse me, Matthew, if you say, I'm not comfortable affirming your gender, even if you have all the love in your heart, even if you're like, I've totally, I love you as a gay man, I'm just not going to acknowledge your husband. Like, it doesn't matter that you think you're being loving. If you say, I love you as a gay man, like, but I think that you being gay is a sin. Like, I love you as a person, but you being gay is a sin. And I'm not going to acknowledge your husband. Like, you can feel as loving as you want. And it doesn't change the fact that you are being disrespectful and you are stripping someone of something that is important to them. You're like, oh, I acknowledge that you are a sinner, but I'm not going to affirm that your gay identity is legitimate, and I'm not going to call your husband your husband. Like, it's okay for you to believe those things in the sense that nobody can stop you. Nobody's going to make it illegal, but like, it doesn't change the fact that it is fundamentally confrontational and disrespectful. Does that make sense?
That's right.
Just the disrespectful part and rude part. I feel like rude is connected to malintent, but you're saying rude is not connected to malintent?
No, you don't have to be rude on purpose.
Yeah.
Okay.
It happens all the time. Like, like older adults will be like, oh, your music is weird. And they're just saying whatever, but they're not meaning, they're just being rude. They're like, oh, I don't like the beats of your music or whatever. And it's like, they're just giving their opinion, but it can sound pretty off-putting and rude, right? Like it happens all the time. It's like, oh, you like mint
rude, but
ice
is it
cream?
rude though?
I hate. It's like, oh, you like mint ice cream? Ugh, that tastes like toothpaste. I don't know why you like that. And you're expressing your opinion and you're not meaning to be rude, but you sound rude when you do that, right? So it's kind of like, you don't have to have malintent to be rude. Now, when you're being rude on purpose, then it goes into, yes, you have malintent, you're being bigoted. Right, like there's levels of it, right, where it's like, I'm never going to acknowledge your gay marriage because it goes against my religious belief, and that person might be the sweetest person on the planet, and they're so sweet, and they crochet every day, and they give to the homeless, and they have puppies and cats and all that, but they're like, but I'm never going to recognize Sam and John's relationship. But but they seem like this sweet innocent person, but deep down inside they're just being rude and not nice, but they don't know that they're being that way, right? It's just ignorance. Ignorance isn't,
I've always considered rude as connected to malintent. This is the first time I'm kind of really hearing that, so maybe something I need to kind of rethink about or something. So I guess I'll leave it at that. But
And I want to
leave it
give you
at
a
that.
couple
And
other
Matthew,
examples.
yeah, go ahead.
I do want to wrap this up quick. I know, Josie, you've been trying to move us on for like 10 minutes. Like touching a pregnant lady's belly because you're so happy for her, but you didn't ask her permission first. That's rude, no matter how loving you're being. Touching a Black person's hair because you're curious what their texture of their hair it feels like is rude, especially if you didn't ask. Like, there are a lot of different ways that you can overstep someone's boundaries in a way that they feel disrespected by, that is not intentionally like ill-intended on your part. Like, you don't mean to make the pregnant lady feel like her boundaries don't matter, but you have in effect done that, right? So like, this is the space that we're occupying. And once someone has told you, please don't touch my pregnant belly, please don't touch my hair, please don't call me by that name, or please don't call me by that pronoun, if you continue to do it, then that is active malintent, because you know that you're doing something that makes them uncomfortable or that they don't like, that is crossing their boundaries. So maybe the first time you accidentally call someone the wrong name or whatever, the first time we can say, okay, you just didn't know. You know, we all go through this experience when we're raising children. Okay, this kid just didn't know that he shouldn't go up and lick people randomly. My brother used to do that. But then you teach them, right? And then if they keep doing it, you understand that they are intentionally transgressing boundaries. And at that point, it is like basically maliciously intended rudeness. So yeah,
So the person only gets, no, so to speak, one life, so to speak. Like you mess it that one time. Now every time you say, "Hey, look, I don't feel comfortable calling you she, her," now you're being intentionally rude.
Yeah. The first time is unintentionally rude, and then once you've been corrected and you keep doing it, you're being intentionally rude because you know what the person wants to be called and you refuse to do it, which is why
And
we
that's
just
kind of my
usually
point.
just don't talk to you.
And that's my point. Now malintent is being attributed to the person who says, "Hey, look, I really just don't see you as a woman or a she, her."
It's the same.
Yeah.
It's the same way if you continue to touch that pregnant woman's belly.
You're like, oh,
Like,
I don't mean
you
anything bad
imagine-
by it. I just want to hear the baby moving. Like, it doesn't matter that you don't think that it's disrespectful or that you don't think that it's rude. The person who you're being rude to gets to decide. Like, if I tell you that your OCD is fake and you're a freak and you need to go to therapy, or maybe I say like, oh, you actually need to have electroshock therapy done on your brain because, or if I cough, if I start coughing near you on purpose or something, like, there is a space here where it's like, I know that this bothers you and I'm doing it on purpose. And that we're like firmly on the side of like, no, this is rude. If I'm like, yeah, I'm just not comfortable washing my hands before I shake your hand. And you have every right to be like, I'm not going to shake your hand then. We're not going to be in community together then. Like, so I would say just introspect a little bit on this idea of rudeness and this idea of like, we want to live in a socially cohesive environment. We don't want to upset people on purpose. And if you want to call back and try this again, we can always do that. But like, try to think of what it's like to be in a society with people who are different than you, and whether your personal belief or your personal comfort should trump other people's boundaries and other people's like being respectful toward them. So I'll give you one last
I would
word,
encourage the
Matthew, and
same
then
on-
we're going to go ahead and move it on.
I would encourage the same on your guys' side as well, to try to consider that as well.
To
What do you
consider what's
mean?
rude.
No, you said consider like people for your comfort, like just changing and moving around for your comfort and having to do that.
Yeah. Again, I'm not forcing anyone to be polite to me. I just reserve the
Okay.
right to not speak to you anymore if you're not being polite to me, is basically it. So if you feel like it's impolite for trans people to want to be called a certain thing, then I think that's a totally different problem that I encourage you to call back next time. So thank you, Matthew, for this very stimulating conversation, and we will chat with you again in the future.
Yep, later.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay.
That was a long call. That
Yeah.
was a long call. And and another thing is like also, and I didn't get to ask Matthew, but I wanted to as well, was essentially like, if you're calling in to be reaffirmed in your belief, are you really listening? Like and that's kind of like the meta question, right? Because when you call in 5, 6, 7 times into a
It's
show,
been so many
and
times. It's been like 10
so many
times.
times. I know it's like our a guest host here.
Yeah.
But essentially, like, you got to think about, like, why are you calling? Are you calling for your own beliefs to be ratified in the understanding that you're going to say this argument and we're going to respond the way you probably know we're going to respond, and then that is your proof that you are right? You really got to think about, are you listening? Are your beliefs really being challenged? Are you actually calling in good faith? Are you actually thinking about, like, why we say the things that we say? Like, those are questions you really need to ask yourself, Matthew. Like, seriously, like, you got to think about why you are calling over and over and over, because we're not your therapist, right? And we're never going to affirm your victimhood here. Like, it's just never going to happen. And we have to make sure that you are listening to the conversations that we're having, because we're spending so much of our intellectual energy to you. And we respect you to actually try to clear your ignorance when we have these conversations, because there will be a wall, Matthew. There will be a moment where Lux and I are going to be like, sorry, Matthew, we're not picking up the phone today. Because honestly, it gets exhausting, especially when you say all that conversation that we just had with you just reaffirms your belief even more.
Yeah, I'm like, my brain kind of short circuited a little bit, because I'm like, how are we reaffirming your belief? Like, I think that the belief that we're reaffirming is that trans people, like, want to be treated respectfully, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
and yeah. So it is rude for you to not treat us the way that we want to be treated. So, like, I don't really understand what the point of him calling is at this point. But hopefully people
I just want
enjoy
to
it. So
add, I thought it
yeah,
was
please.
hilarious when he accused us of being in an echo chamber when we're literally on a call with somebody who does not agree with us. That doesn't make any fucking sense, Matthew.
Yeah. Yeah.
So true. So
Like,
true. Oh
I
my
even
gosh.
encourage people on Twitter to call in. I'm like, yeah, please call into the show. Like,
Yeah,
we
let's do
want
it.
to talk about people who disagree, to talk to people who disagree. Excuse me. So usually we take one more caller before we look at the poll for today. But I think
That
since
went
that call
long.
went a little bit long, yeah, let's discuss the poll results from earlier. So we were looking at the subject of, like, do you think trans hormone care requires specialist oversight, even considering that the wait lists are very long and the primary doctors have previously handled the care. So you all voted in the chat here, 285 votes. Thank you so much for that participation, by the way. Y'all said no, 76%, and yes, 23%. I know sometimes it's easy to misclick on here, so I'm not sure if that 23, that seems like if a quarter of you think that a specialist is required. I would be very interested to see what y'all say on the comments of the community tab, because you can also vote again on the community tab. But now let's have, like, a moment of discussion. What do you think about this, Josie?
Yeah, absolutely. And also, if you are a yes on this poll and you want to call in to discuss your answer and reasoning, we'd love to hear that as well.
Mhm.
But honestly, I think it's interesting because I think we are trained in a lot of settings, especially in internationally, that we are supposed to see endocrinologists because hormones are dangerous. And in reality, hormones are not dangerous because everybody has them. If you are a cis woman, you have estrogen. And guess what the side effects for giving somebody estrogen as a trans person is? It's the same as a person who naturally has estrogen. It's the same thing
Yeah.
for testosterone treatment. So a lot of times people look at the side effects of medications and are like, "Oh my gosh, this can cause blood clots." It's like, "Yeah, welcome to having fem hormones." Or it's like, "Oh my gosh, this can cause anger issues." Yes, welcome to being masculine.
Yeah.
So like, so like there is a lot of that. And I think a lot of people just want a second opinion and want to be able to have that extra level of care, which is everybody's right? If somebody wants to see an endocrinologist because they feel like their hormone systems may be needing extra care, that's completely your right. But for this question, I think if you require a specialist, then you require a specialist. If you don't require a specialist because you feel that your primary doctor has the ability to look at your blood sample and say, yeah, this is what is good for you, then do that. So that's my thought on it.
Yeah. Basically, like, there is a range of like hormones that are typical for cis females and that are typical for cis males. And when you're giving someone cross-sex hormones, your goal is to just, okay, we're going to do a blood test every couple of months and we want to be somewhere within that range. Like if your testosterone is like 600, then cool, you're within the range, maybe a little bit on the like mid to low end of the range, and then like you can discuss if that level is right or if you should have a dose adjustment, right? And like Josie was saying, yes, your healthcare needs can change. Like people will claim like, oh my God, this makes this increases your risk of cardiovascular disease, but like it just raises your cardiovascular risk to the same level of your target gender. So, yeah, basically like any general doctor should have the expertise and the ability to send your like lab results in to do this. It is not something, it's not like special and different. Or you would also need to send cis women who need birth control to a separate specialist doctor because, oh my God, it's too complicated. So yeah, basically, and especially the situation in the UK is that the primary care doctors have already been providing this care for folks who have like long since been diagnosed with gender dysphoria. And I actually wonder if this is also the case for like people who've had gonadectomy. Like if you've had your gonads removed, are you then going to have to get back on the trans clinic wait list in order to get this care? That seems far more dangerous than just continuing to provide the care. And general doctors have just as much access to the studies and all this. Like, yeah, it seems like pretty basic level care. But if you disagree with us, please leave your comments on the community tab page. We appreciate that very much. And with that said, do we think we're ready to go to a new caller?
Yes, I think we should just go down how we got them because we've had some patient people waiting on the lines.
Yes, we appreciate everybody's
and we
patience.
are going to get to you. If you're on hold, we are going to get to you.
The lines are closed because we've got like 5 more calls. But don't forget to hit the like button. That always helps the show. And if you want to get in your votes for hashtag Team Josie, hashtag Team Lux, $5 super chats, we can get your votes in and we will read all of those at the end of the show. So whoever you want to have a punishment. Oh, by the way, are we going to maybe do one more caller and then put up the poll for the punishments? Because I know we usually have you all help us decide which punishment we're going to do. So
I'll put up that poll right now and let the chat start doing it while roll.
Great. And we'll go ahead and take Matt from Oklahoma.
Yeah. Matt from Oklahoma wants to talk about the term ally and raising your child as a they baby. What's up, Matt?
Hey, not much. Just wanted to start by saying that sometimes listening to the other Matthew makes me want to change my name. But when I listen to Matt Dillahunty, and my confidence is restored. So.
There you go.
Good reasoning. Good reasoning.
So the first thing I assume is going to be a shorter conversation. I've described myself as an ally in the past, and still kind of currently do, but I had also listened to a podcast where the hosts were discussing the pros and cons, and they had brought up that the term ally kind of implies that it's not your direct confrontation or whatever. It's like, in thinking about countries, it's like we would get involved if our ally and a third country were in dispute, even though the third country didn't do anything to us directly. But like in dealing with the queer community and cis people, whatever, like it's directly the heteronormative people pushing the prosecution.
Yeah, and Matt, I would prefer you say you're an ally to know that you're safe, right? And say, okay, I am a person that respects trans people. And, I always kind of say if a trans person says you're an ally, right? Like, that's kind of how I look at it. If the community sees you as someone who is safe, then you are an ally. There's a lot of theory behind ally about allyship that is performative. There's a lot of different like conversations that I've had about, you know, sometimes allies try to take the spotlight from trans folks and like queer folks, where it's like, I'm an ally, so I need to be included in this conversation. And there is a lot of harm that does happen in that way of like saviorism and saying, I'm going to protect this community, and infantilization that happens with ally communities. But I wouldn't be so much of like, I can't consider myself an ally anymore, because then you're kind of getting the negative effect of not being considered an ally. So it's a lot of times it's like, yes, I support the trans community, and then that allyship is kind of like implied, right? You can say it that way. But like, you know, so there's a lot of like interesting queer theory that comes along with allyship, but we cannot get trans liberation without cis allyship, for example. Like, it's possible because there isn't enough of us. So that's kind of like how we have to think about the fact that like, I love my cis allies that support my existence and support me, and I love them and they're great. And I wouldn't be upset if they were at a queer, like a pride event wearing like queer ally shirt. Like, I'd be like, cool, great, whatever, I don't care, right? So yeah, maybe not put so much weight on it. And there's a lot of people who are like, oh, don't call yourself an ally because it's performative and you're just trying to say that you're helpful. But there's also the need for allyship. So it's a tough cookie to split sometimes.
I pretty much don't have anything to add to that.
Topic.
Sorry, you said you have nothing to add to that?
Yeah, basically. I mean, like, yeah, ally. I kind of see people have talked about it before. Like, you shouldn't call yourself an ally because that's something that the community has to decide about you. And I do think, like, if you call yourself an ally, but then you do things that are contrary to the well-being of trans people or whatever, then, like, obviously, you're just saying that in order to feel good about yourself. In the same way that people will say, like, oh, I'm not racist, but then they do racist things because they view everything that they do as being within the context of I'm not racist. So yeah, I can see how it'd be problematic, I guess, but I would prefer people self-identify as allies, because then, you know, you can then take that to conversations with people who are not being allies. You can be like, yo, in the same way that you said earlier, like, we get involved in foreign affairs when our allies, quote unquote, are being impacted by something. So it's like, in the same way, if you consider yourself an ally to trans people or gay people or whatever, then, you know, if gay people or trans people are under attack, then you are going to get involved. You're going to say, well, I'm not voting for that guy, or we should do this, or, you know, this person shouldn't have done that, whatever. Like, it's going to enable you to get involved. So I guess I would rather have good people identifying as like the kind of person who's concerned that they're not a good enough ally. I want them to identify as an ally so that I can feel better about allies in general, you know, so that I don't think that maybe they're just saying it to say it, you know?
Yeah, that all makes sense.
Yeah. And then you had a second half to your question about raising your child as a baby.
Yeah, I believe it was you, Josie, that had mentioned it in a previous call, just kind of an offhand comment about a couple that was raising their child as a baby. And I saw a video a long time ago about a couple that was doing that as well. And in that scenario, the parent wouldn't even let their mother like change the kid's diaper because they didn't want that to affect, you know, how they view the child. And so just to say again, I'm cishet, and definitely I know I have internal biases, but when I hear the estimate of the number of trans people, I think you guys said like 1%, maybe a high estimate of 5. I think I heard one time.
That depends, like gender nonconforming included in that. Yeah, it can go up as high as 5, because I know a lot of queer people like identify with the umbrella term as well as trans, but like as far as people that are probably receiving transitional related healthcare, it's probably as high as 2%. So there's a lot of different numbers that you can look at through research. But yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. So just with the child having, I guess on the other hand, a low estimate of a 95% chance of being cis, when I hear that, and again, coming from my own internal biases and not trying to be gender critical, but it just seems a bit, I don't know, disingenuous. It may not be the right word.
Disingenuous to raise babies or not to raise babies?
Yeah, disingenuous to raise them as babies because they have such a high likelihood to be cis.
Sure. So I have a response to that. So we know from the way that science and social ability that a lot of infants as early as like 2 to 3 years old in some cases have a very strong sense of gender identity pretty early on in their childhood. But as they approach like when they are able to speak 4 or 5 years old, words like boy and girl and person and all of that type of stuff is like very prominent in their lives. So you're going to be able to know pretty early on, before there's even a lot of socialization, if your child is kind of leaning one way or the other, or the any other way, trans, whatever, right? You're going to be able to identify that if you are a parent that pays attention. And to push back on the fact that you're right, 95%, 92, 98% on the high end, cis is most likely in the cards for most people as they grow up into maturity. Because of that, being a baby for the first 4 or 5 years of your life will not affect the track that a cis person can jump on. So as soon as the baby's like, no, I'm a girl, they're gonna jump onto the girl track that the society has already laid out: dresses, long hair, feminine things, da 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 da. And it's the same way for a boy, right? If you think about it, Matt, too, back in I think as early as the early 1900s, boys and girls were raised exactly the same. They were raised with frilly dresses, flats. They had like curls and everything. They didn't cut their hair. And it wasn't until like 5 or 6 years old when they actually cut boys' hair and put boys in like little, boy outfits or whatever you want to say. So we have precedent already in society of raising children in a genderless way. And that did not affect those kids, right? You could say like somebody who was raised in the early 1900s, and there's not many left, but there are still some left, that said, oh, because I was 5 years old and I was still in dresses because my family was doing the old traditional style of not raising my child genderless, it didn't affect their ability to have a family, be manly, drive trucks and all of that type of stuff, right? So there's already a precedent for it. And because society is already set up for a cis person, being cis makes the most sense for a cis person to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does. And just to add on, I kind of half answered it for myself because I was also thinking of like right and left-handed. Like even though right-handedness is a higher proportion, I just did a quick Google and it was like 85 to 90% right-handed. We still don't assume children are one way or the other until we see them using one or the other dominantly. But I was still just curious to hear y'all's thoughts on it.
Yeah. And honestly, raising a baby, right? So it's like if somebody raised their kid as a baby, like they're not going to remember really, like when they're kids. They're going to be like, I all I can remember is wearing girl clothes. I didn't know that my parents like didn't give me a gender until like such and such time, right? Like it's like that's how it's going to be, right? Because the formative years of a person's life are well past the age of 5 and 6 years old. So it's kind of like, like babies are genderless blobs. That's what they are, right? Like that I mean, there's just, they don't, like, I never understood why people put so much emphasis on a baby's gender, because they are just genderless blobs. Like they poop, they cry, they do all of the things that they do, and the only thing that's gendered is because the parents chose the different kind of clothes and toys they put in their crib, right? Like, so in reality, it's like gender isn't really that important for a baby's life until the kid starts saying, no, I want to be this, or I want to be that, or I am this naturally because that's the way this person grows up. So yeah, I wouldn't put so much stake on it. Because
Yeah.
most likely
makes sense.
that baby is not going to grow up as non-binary. Right, like I have like my friends, they're both non-binary people. They have a kid that they're raising as a baby, and they're very strict about even who changes the diaper, because of the same thing that you were talking about before. And they even told me they're like 95% sure that this kid is not going to be a they them. Right, like they're just like, we're not going to assume that, because it would be the same thing as assuming if they're going to be a boy or girl, right? So they're doing their best to not even assume that they them gender, right? They're just letting the kid grow up and pick the gender that they identify most with, and I think they're incredibly wise people for being able to say no, even though the parents are they them, they're not saying their kid is they them, because that would put on the same gender expectations as putting a cis kid through a femme or a masculine presentation. So if it's done right, they're not assuming the gender of non-binary. But go ahead, Lux.
I think that is a misconception that people sometimes have, and I'm not saying that you have this, Matt, but generally sometimes, like, I've spoken to people in the past who think like, oh, you're raising this kid in a way that's like they're not allowed to like certain gendered things or whatever. But like, really, raising a baby is basically just raising a kid in a way that's like you're going to give them access to toys that are traditionally boy toys and traditionally female toys. Like, so many people raised female lose out on lifetime spatial reasoning skills because they're not provided with like Lego, because Lego for some reason is considered a boy's toy. So, oh my God, did I freeze?
No, I can still hear you.
Frozen.
I can still hear you, but you're
just
frozen.
can't see me. I don't know why this happens. I'm using a different, I'm not even using Google Chrome, and we knew that there was an issue with Google Chrome. Hi, I'm back now. Cool.
Back.
So anyway,
You're back.
it's basically just raising kids with this idea that like, yeah, some boys have this part, some girls have this part, and girls can like trucks and boys can like ballet. And also, we're not going to expect anything of you. Like, I totally get the anxiety that people have around letting grandma change the diaper, because then they're going to start treating the kid in a certain way. And, I think for any kid, and I think this is true for cis kids too, that like being put in a particular box at that young age is not good. Like, I'm working at the Renaissance Festival right now, and I sell these little birds. They make this cute whistle sound, and there's different colors, right? I cannot tell you how many times a 3 or 4-year-old kid, or maybe up to 5 or 6, is like reaching for a pink bird, and the parent is like, oh, you want a blue bird, don't you? And they're like steering the kid away. And it's like a little boy kid, basically. And I'm like, this is crushing to me that you're limiting what color bird this kid can have because you're trying to put them on this particular path. So that to me is what the they be concept is standing in opposition to. It's just like standing in opposition to this thing that we do where we rigidly reinforce a gender binary. And yes, psychologically, we know that kids typically understand their own gender by the age of 5. So like the they be thing again doesn't even last that long. Is like as soon as the kid starts declaring, I'm a girl, I'm a boy, they start declaring what they like or what they don't like, the they be thing doesn't need to be like rigidly reinforced. We're not like disallowing kids from enjoying gendered stuff. So yeah, like I think just because it's a relatively small number of people who end up being trans doesn't mean that you won't still benefit from not being like rigidly forced to be a particular kind of boy or a particular kind of girl, even though most people are still going to end up going down one of those two paths. I don't know. That's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah. But thank you for the conversation,
Yeah,
Matt.
no,
What are your thoughts?
yeah, no, that makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense, and I think part of the feeling I got was thinking that you were putting the they them on it rather than just not putting any label on them, because
That's what it
similar to
is.
something you brought up in the previous one, that if you know a person's preferred pronouns, then calling them they them is misgendering.
Yep.
So that's when I was like, so are you misgendering 95% of kids, or I think that's partly where I came from it, but I definitely support letting them play with whatever. Stupid example, my father-in-law was playing a video for my daughter, and it was just some random YouTube video of trucks and cars, like dump trucks and stuff, and that my nephews love, which is why he played it for her. And my mother-in-law was like, she doesn't want to watch that. Like what?
Yeah.
She's less
There
than a
it
year
is.
old. How do you know what she wants to watch? Like,
Exactly. Exactly.
but
And that's what it's
yeah,
about.
so
That's and that's your gut instinct, and you're right, Matt. Like it shouldn't matter. She's 1 year old. Like they're genderless blobs. Who cares? Like that's really what it is.
yeah,
Yeah.
sure. I have fairly, I should say, very conservative in-laws and fairly conservative family, so I'm kind of struggling with that as well, to not cause too much tension, but also stand up for my daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Well, we
anyway,
appreciate
I
that.
appreciate the perspectives. Yeah, I do have one
Yeah.
super quick thing as well, if I can.
Sure.
Um,
Really quick.
so, yeah. So when trying to tell someone that gender and sex are different, and I've heard y'all's examples on previous calls, is it fair to say, just looking at a cis male, at one point in his life he's a boy, and at one point in his life he's a man, and those are two different genders with different societal expectations or responsibilities?
Yeah.
Or is that
Totally.
Yeah.
oversimplifying?
Yeah. I was comfortable being a girl, and as soon as the prospect of becoming a woman came upon me, I was like, no. Like there are completely different expectations, and I do think that the role of woman and the role of girl and the role of man and boy are pretty different, and you become a man through like age or experience or whatever. Like, nobody's out here. I mean, well, sometimes the adultification does happen to children of color, but typically we're not out here saying a 5-year-old, you're the man of the house. Like typically that doesn't
Mhm.
happen. So I do think that they're pretty distinct.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that is that. I
Yeah.
think that is that can be a good persuasion point for sure, Matt.
Okay, awesome. I thought so, but it's
Okay.
one of that confirmation.
Sure. Awesome.
Thanks for the
Well, have a
stimulating
great day.
conversation, Matt. We appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you guys. Have a
Later.
good one.
All right.
All right. Get to
Before our next
Ben.
caller, another
Oh
reminder
yes.
to hit the like button and get your votes in.
That's
Hashtag
right.
Team Lux, hashtag Team Josie with a $5 super chat. That is how you get your vote counted, and we will read out all of those super chats. You don't have to vote if you don't want to, but you might as well if you're going to vote. If you're going to do
Yeah.
super chat, you might as well vote.
For sure.
And it looks like the 50% of people in the chat say that the loser should defend the position that sandals should only be worn with socks. So
Yes.
whichever one of
Yes.
us you want to defend a silly position, get your votes in. We have 173 votes and 400 people watching, so we can get some more votes in on that. You can turn the tide. Anyway, thanks everybody for hanging out with us. We're having a good show today. Are you
Yeah, it's a
ready to move
good
on, Josie?
one. Yeah, I am ready. Let's go.
Yeah. All right. We're just taking them in the order that you guys came in. Thank you for being patient, waiting on the lines. Ben, who uses any/all from Ohio, wants to talk about what are the best steps to take moving forward as a trans person. Ben. How you doing today? Lay it on us.
Go away, Chris. Sorry.
Hi.
Go away. Sorry, my brother's here. I want him to go away so I can talk.
Okay.
Yeah. I like did like a whole. I did all the appointments and everything. I don't know if Lux remembers me. I called like a long time ago about this, and just now I've like went forward with it. But I got like prescribed hormones and all that, but I haven't taken them because I'm really nervous about taking them, and I don't like. I'm super nervous on whether it is the right thing or not, and I don't know what to do from here because I have them. I can just take them, but I'm like scared too. Mainly,
I mean, the cool thing is that it's not going to do anything immediately. Like, it's going to take at least a couple months for it to start doing anything that you would notice.
I'm just scared to. I'm just won't be happy.
Yeah.
I mean, honey, that's a
think what you're
completely
feeling-
different question. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
Josie.
that is. I was gonna say, Ben, you know how many trans people, if I could get a quarter for every trans person that's sitting with their hormones saying they're scared, I would have a lot of quarters. I will say this: everything that you're feeling is completely normal and completely valid. These are very, it's a big step, right? You're essentially saying, I'm gonna go through this puberty and it's gonna be a ride for the next 5 to 7 years. And that is a very daunting thing, right? I'm sure you've read like what's gonna happen in a few months, like boob growth, whatever, and I'm assuming which hormones you're taking, so I apologize if I'm wrong about that. But like different things are going to happen, secondary sex characteristics are going to happen, like all of that type of stuff. But I want to reaffirm what Lux just said. Nothing is immediate and it takes time. So if you actually start taking the hormones and you're like, I hate the way these make me feel, you can stop taking them. It's completely fine and it's completely normal to do so. And nothing permanent is going to happen in the first couple of weeks, if not first month or two, of your experience. However, when you and I'll speak as Ben, is it okay for me to assume you're taking estrogen?
Yeah.
Okay. So I took estrogen. I take estrogen as a trans woman, and when I first started taking my hormones, I had a lot of peace of mind where it was like my head was always spinning, and I was just like like the anxiety was always going, and then I took them, and then I felt a lot more at peace. Right? I felt like the voice in my mind, and I know this isn't unique to my experience, but this is how it worked for me, and I know it happens for trans masculine folks as well. But kind of having that voice quieted where you're just like, okay, I'm in it, I'm on the ride, I'm strapped in, let's go. And that peace of mind can be very soothing to that. But I will say that the mental things that happen in your mind actually happen the soonest. At least they happen for me, where your emotions are going to get a little bit more like fine-tuned. I guess I can say it in a nice way. I know I cried a lot when I first started taking my hormones. Everything is like it's a drop of a feather. I would cry. You're gonna get a little bit emotional. I feel like hormones for me was like putting a bullhorn next to my emotions, and then my emotions were just more amplified. It was like, I was just like more in tune with my emotions, but I was also much more emotional. Some people don't experience that at all. Some people get more numb.
Yeah, I think I'll probably like just cry more than I already do. 'Cause I cry.
Yeah.
Like I'll cry
Yeah.
whenever you guys have a good conversation. I start to tear up whenever we have a respectful conversation with an opposing position. I start to tear up because I'm really emotional and stuff.
Yeah.
So I feel like that'll just be even worse.
It probably will be even worse, and it's going to be like that for a few months. At least it was for me. But there are going to be things that are going to be things that you'll see. Like, it's like your smell's gonna change, right? Like you're like all of a sudden you're gonna become odorless, and then you're gonna have a new
That's
smell.
also
Uh,
it's also something I'm worried about because I have a dog that's known me for a long time,
I
but
had a dog.
doesn't
I have a
he doesn't
dog,
like
and she loves me.
strangers. He doesn't like strangers. He'll like attack you because he was abused and he's afraid and stuff.
You know,
And having my
honest, you're
brother
gonna
after
be the same person. You're gonna be the same
yeah,
person. Your
well,
dog is gonna be
it's
completely
just
fine.
he's old and I don't know how much of it's smell or sight. So
No, it's
I'm
fine.
just hoping. Okay.
You're
It's going to be
fine. Your dog
gradual.
loves
Like
you.
even that part is going to be
Yeah.
gradual. So the
Well,
dog is going to be like, okay,
I
your
don't.
scent is changing, but it's
He
still
lives with
you.
he lives with my parents, so I might like
Yeah.
come next time and smell like incredibly different, and he'll not know who I am. But hopefully
No,
that's not a problem.
they'll know your voice. They'll have a sense of you that you
Yeah.
had before. Like it's not like you're gonna completely be different. Like believe me, your dog is probably gonna be fine. It's gradual, and so don't worry about that. I would not worry about that. Just see your dog. Go visit your dog. You should be visiting your dog anyway.
Yeah. Then I'm worried about.
Go ahead.
Then I'm worried about like my parents' reactions because like I know that they're not gonna like kick me out or anything. My mom would not let that happen. I've even talked to her about it. Like she said, like I even said, like if I transitioned, because I've talked about this with her before. I even said if I transitioned, would you kick me out? And she said I would never do that, like, no matter what. Even if you decided to do
That's
that, I
good.
would always support you and everything. So like I'm not worried about that. I'm just worried about like how it might affect like the relationship with my dad and my like less so my mom, but more my dad because my dad's a little more like close-minded than my mom is. My mom will listen to reason. My dad's a lot harder to get through too. And I just don't
And
want to. I
that
have a really
makes
good relationship with them, and I don't want to
yeah,
lose
that
that.
makes sense. That you're a little nervous, and honestly, it takes time. My parents, it took time. My biological dad, he never lived with me anyway, so it was kind of like he was just out of my life already when I started, so it didn't matter. But my mom, it took a little bit of time. Like, she was weirded out when I wore like femme clothes early in my transition, right? And would tell me about it and saying that it weirded her out. Like she would say things like that, and it hurt. It sucked.
Yeah,
But
my mom would
honestly,
never do that. My mom would
well,
never
there you
do
go.
that. I used to like. Yeah, I used to like. It was years ago. I was in like middle school, I think. If you know about Monster High, I used to get Monster High dolls, but I was like a guy. I was boy moding or whatever, and I had Monster High dolls. I also had My Little Pony dolls in elementary school, but that was also like the brony
Yeah.
phase too.
Mhm.
So.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've done a
So,
lot of girly things. My mom never cared. My dad never really cared
yeah.
either. But this is a little different.
A
Yeah.
lot of the big changes that you're going to experience are going to be happening at the 7 month, 1 year mark, 1.5 year marks. These are going to be the things that are going to be like visible changes, but because if they see
Hmm.
you often enough, it's still not going to be, it's still going to be so gradual. It's like, when you have a friend who's working out and then all of a sudden you're with them all the time, and then all of a sudden they say, oh, I've gained this much weight, and you're like, whoa, you've really grown up, you've gotten buff, versus somebody who's been working out for 6 months and you don't see them for 6 months and you look at them like, holy crap, you've lost so much weight, you look great, right? It's like
Yeah.
that, right? So if your family is around while you're transitioning, it won't be a dramatic shift. If you disappear for a year like I did, like with my family, I
Well,
I came back a completely different human in their eyes.
yeah, I live like 2 hours away from where my parents live because I'm going to college soon. Next semester, I'm going to be starting college. I'm going to be transitioning while in college too, which is going to be like,
Yeah.
which will be fun. That's going to be fun.
It's a great
Definitely.
time to do it, honestly. It's like the
It
perfect time to
is.
do it. If you're gonna pick any
Oh,
point in your life, it might as well be at college.
Yeah.
yeah. Luckily, I'm going to college at OU in Athens, where they're really like supporting there and stuff. There's a lot of like they're really inclusive at OU, so that's
Yeah.
Nice.
I'm not
No,
scared
that's
about
great,
that.
Ben. So going back to your initial question, are talking about taking your first step and actually moving forward, how do you feel? Do you still want to start, or do you want to start or wait till you get into college where you have other people who may
Well,
be your transition sisters? Like
no,
where how do you feel?
yeah, I wanna, yeah, I wanna like start, but I also like, I want to start, but I want to wait because I don't know what to do. I like,
Yeah.
a lot of big problem is I have OCD and anxiety too. I take medicine for anxiety and I take medicine for OCD as well as antidepressants. So I have all those things as well as this, and it makes me not want to get out of bed because I'm so stressed out
I hear
I
you.
will
about it.
say the thing that I latched onto toward the beginning of your call is like a concern that you're not going to be happy. And I want to hit on that point because, like, first of all, many trans people find that being on the correct hormones just kind of makes their brain calm down and work a little bit better. Like, there are people who say it helps alleviate some of their symptoms of anxiety. Um, it's not an anxiety medication, obviously. But
Well,
I
yeah.
think one of the main things that it does, much like antidepressants, is it brings your baseline up to a place where you can more easily handle the things that life is throwing at you. Like, it just it takes away one of your major stressors, and then it allows your brain to be able to more easily function working on other things. So if you like, I would say I would make an agreement with myself if I was in your position. And I kind of went through a similar, like, I went through a lot of anxiety around starting hormones when I was starting. I was like, I don't know if this is the right thing. I don't know. I don't know. And it ended up being like, it's not going to hurt to try. And I would rather try than not know what it's going to be like. So for me, I kind of was just like, okay, I'm just going to do it. And if I need to stop, then I'll stop. So if I was in your position, I would probably make an agreement with myself that's like, okay, I will take it every day for 2 weeks like I'm supposed to. And then at the end of the 2 weeks, I'll kind of reevaluate. Because by that time, 2 weeks is kind of enough time for you to start feeling some of the emotional and mental effects where you'll be like, okay, I am starting to feel like, okay, I'm crying a little bit more, or maybe I'm less overwhelmed and I'm crying less. And like, am I starting to feel kind of different, better or worse, And then you can kind of reevaluate from that point and go, okay, well, now I'm going to go ahead and agree to stay on it for another 2 weeks. And after 1 month, I can touch base with myself and reevaluate again. Like, like, transitioning doesn't solve your problems, but it does put
Helps
you
you
at a
deal
place
with
where
them.
you're like, yeah, it helps you deal with them, exactly. It puts you in that place where you're like, well, I feel like I can at least handle getting a bad grade now. Whereas before I felt like if I got a bad grade, I would lose my mind. Um, so yeah, I would say just take baby steps with it and don't expect that it's going to change everything all overnight, but it is also going to probably be a bigger change than you would think. Like, it is going to feel
Yeah.
different. Yeah.
I I will also say this too, Ben. What helped me was I actually started my transition on my birthday. I actually took my first like pill on my birthday. So it was like for me it was like formative. I was like, it's my new birthday, damn it. I'm gonna celebrate it as my transiversary. And maybe that's
Kind of
something you can look
funny.
at. It's like what yeah, right? And so
So
think about it that way too. You can look at a date on the calendar and be like, I want this day to be my transiversary. I'm gonna do it on this day and work up to it, right? There's so many different things you can do.
no, yeah, I told myself like last time I called, I told myself that when because in Ohio they like last year they passed a law that like only people that are 21 and up can get any kind of hormones and stuff like that, which is stupid, and I hate the fucking government. But but I told myself that after I turned 21, I was gonna get them and stuff, and then I got them, and then I was like, all right, now what? What do I do
Yeah,
now?
yeah.
And so I just
So
taken them.
yeah, just do it. Like I think Lux had a great idea about taking them for 2 weeks and reevaluating how you feel, and see how that works out for you. And for me, it's like look at a date on the calendar that you want to be your transiversary, right? And just be like, I'm gonna start this
Yeah,
day, and then just do it, and then that will be your transiversary day, and you can have it be that day, and it can be the fun time, right? Like make it Halloween. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, when you start, like,
Yeah.
it'll be fun time. It's like, oh yeah, Halloween's my transversary. Ha ha ha. So there's like different things that you can do to help yourself mentally prepare.
I'll
But
be a
it
little trans.
really, what was that?
I'll be a little trans witch on Halloween.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So there's all kinds of different strategies that you can do, right? So it's like you got and just remember this, Ben, you got prescribed them, right? You are prescribed them by a doctor that is going to help monitor you and make sure that you're safe and that you're doing this well. So the worst thing that can happen is after 2 weeks, you're like, I don't like this. I don't want to do it. That's the worst case scenario. And so just think about it that way, right?
Yeah. I'm just lucky that I didn't have to jump through so many hoops a lot of other people do, because we have informed consent here, which was nice.
Yeah.
I learned that from Lux, which was really helpful. So thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I'll
You got
Do
it.
it.
take
Give
them for
yourself 2 weeks, and then you can reevaluate.
Yeah.
that
That's
sounds
what I
good.
would do.
Then I'll update
That's
you
what I would
guys.
do. Yeah.
Yeah, let us
Yeah.
know in a couple weeks how it's going, Ben. We
Yeah.
appreciate you
All right,
calling
that's
in.
fine.
Hopefully, we helped you a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. You guys are awesome. I don't know how, like, I don't know how grateful I can express to you. I can't express to you how grateful I am. That's what I'm trying to say. Because that you guys
Yeah.
do this show. This show is like, we need more of this. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
All right, love you
Yeah,
guys.
Well,
we're
You guys are
excited
awesome.
love
for you.
you. Yeah, for
All right.
sure. Love you, Ben.
Talk
Good
to you
Well,
next
luck.
time, hun.
Call us back and let
that's
us
all I've
know.
got. Yeah,
All
definitely
right.
will. All right, bye.
All right. Bye.
Bye. It warms the cold, dead cockles of my heart.
Yeah.
Very sweet. All right. Don't forget, everybody, to get your super chats in. We have 3 more callers. So get your votes in. Hashtag Team Josie, hashtag Team Lux, whichever one you want to do. The loser has to do a punishment, and we will read all of those $5 super chats at the end of the show. Don't forget to hit the like button if you haven't already. We appreciate that very much. And yeah, if you're good, Josie, I will just truck right along to the next person.
Let's go for it.
All right. Nikki from Michigan wants to talk about people who say that trans ideology is a religion. What's up, Nikki?
Hey,
Hello. What do
Hi.
you want to talk about today? Lay it on us.
yeah, so a little bit of background. I was in one of those Twitter spaces the other day, and boy, did I really step into the lion's den.
Yeah.
It was a Twitter space full of some of the people from Gays Against Groomers, actually.
Oh, yeah. Fun.
And someone in that space tried to make the argument that, transgender ideology is just basically a new religion, using the same old, trope that we hear about, I'm just, a woman's soul trapped in a man's body. And they tried to, make this comparison to scripture and, Jesus Christ being, this connection to the, I don't know, transcendental world or whatever. And I wanted to know, how would you argue as an atheist? How would you argue against this notion that somehow trans ideology is a new religion? For my part, I tried to argue that, first of all, I don't believe in the concept of the soul. I believe that what people consider to be the soul is really just consciousness and personality, which is the culmination of biological processes in our brain. I don't know, what do y'all think?
So what I say is that trans people exist in reality. We have observable evidence that trans people exist, that trans people get healthcare to live their, true and authentic lives. We've existed through the beginning of time. for recorded history that trans people have existed. And so the fact that trans people are an observable reality in like time and space of like society is one of the things that I kind of debunk when it comes to people trying to say that the ideology is what makes us trans. What makes us trans is we're just human, right? Like we would have to say, oh, then people who are women are a part of the woman ideology, which is a religion, right? Like it would have to be the same type of thing. Trans people are trans people, just like women who are cis are women, right? Like that's kind of how you can try to use their rounding and logic, even though trans women are women as well. So the idea that like because we're scientifically existent in a community that we can observe that trans people have gender dysphoria that is it is insistent, consistent, and persistent, that we can study it, we can look at it, we can observe it, makes it different from a religion as a whole. And that to me is how you prove trans people in reality. Because if it was ethereal, right, if it was like a God claim, then you could essentially say, oh, trans people don't actually exist because they're kind of like a God claim of faith in like the sky, right? And there's no way we can prove the existence of trans people because it's the same as a God claim, right? So there's like a lot of different ways that you can kind of bite that apple. I don't know, Lex, if you have any other thoughts on that.
I mean, I would probably try to pin someone down on like what is trans ideology? Like what does that mean? What set of beliefs are included in that? And then I'll also ask the person how they personally define religion. Because like honestly, I mean, I'm an atheist, obviously. Like I would not be opposed though if we could start getting religious protection for trans people. Like if you could consider it, if people were like, yeah, this is a new religion, like, okay, bet you owe me religious protections then. Like if it's just another avenue to getting to having the Supreme Court rule in our favor, then I'll take that shit. But yeah, I mean, it's like I want to know what people mean when they say trans ideology. That's something Matthew loves to say all the time. And it's like, what is the ideology? Like we just are trans people. We exist. Is the ideology part that like that we should be allowed to exist? Like what is the belief structure that we have that is yeah, can we get tax exemptions? Like what is the thing? Like, because I don't think it's very useful to have an argument with somebody where you just are talking past each other. Like, okay, what does religion mean?
Right.
Does the set of beliefs that trans people have correlate to a religious view? Like, so you'd have to like, if, I don't. This is part of why I don't argue with religious people that much, because I find it very like nearly impossible to get on the same page about these type of definitions, and so it's just. I mean, they just want to say something inflammatory, ultimately. People are piggybacking off the idea that a religious belief is dogmatic fundamentally, or a religious belief is whatever. Like, I have this like pagan stuff going on over here. Technically, it's a kind of religion, although it's pretty much based on a bunch of material things actually happening. It's spooky season, so we've got all the spooky stuff. We got pumpkins, we've got bones. Like, so I don't think that it's fair to define religion as being exclusively supernatural or exclusively structured. Like, like there's so many different ways. Like, what do you consider a religious belief? Is it just because we all happen to share like a similar idea that gender can transcend like the boundaries of what we associate biologically? Like, yeah. So I guess without knowing what the person would say to that, I can't really go much further. But it's like, yeah, trying to suss out like what do you even mean when you say trans ideology? Does every trans person ascribe to trans ideology, or is it only some of them? And like are
Well,
certain
that's
beliefs within? Sorry, go ahead, y'all. I'll let you go in.
Well, I was going to say that's, I think, kind of what the problem was with the other person's argument, was that they believed that all trans people ascribe to this belief that
Yeah.
that there exists in them a soul that is the opposite gender or what have you. You know, like that's kind of what they were basing their argument off of.
Well, it's and it doesn't make sense, right? Because if and most anti-trans people are theists, right? So like to say that, oh, we're gonna believe in sect souls is very like counterintuitive to their own belief set of like the idea that we all as trans people believe we have a sexed soul, and that soul determines what our body is supposed to be, fundamentally just doesn't comport with the way that trans in science is addressed, right? Like, we don't go to a religious leader and say, my soul is a woman, so therefore I need HRT, right? Like it doesn't comport to the way that we actually receive medicine, right? Like, we receive medicine when we talk to a medical provider and tell that provider, hey, I'm trans, and here's all the things that say that I'm trans because of the way that I think, and blah, 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 blah. Okay, and then we receive a physical thing, which HRT or surgical care. Then we then take that, and then we can see with science our bodies physically change. That is beyond what a religious organization would ever see as reality. So in you could say that there are, and this is really interesting because I would love to be in an argument in this argument with this person that you were having this argument with, because the conversation then becomes, are you talking about like a very religious trans person that was raised religious, they're still a theist, and they actually believe in sect souls, so therefore they feel that their soul is feminine, so therefore they should receive gender affirming healthcare because of their religiosity? Because if that's the case, then you would not affirm that religious person's relationship with their God, would you? If their God is deeming this person to get gender affirming care, then why would you stop them? Right? Like, so you can really turn those arguments really easily, being like, oh, so you're saying that religion plays a role in this, so therefore a God is telling a trans person that they can be trans, so therefore their body can comport to their soul that is sexed. Right, because then they're having, well, souls can't be sexed. Okay, great. So you believe in souls. All right, so why do you believe that an atheist trans person needs to believe your soul sexed thing? Right? Like it's a
Right.
very silly argument, and it breaks apart very easily. And that's why I say trans people exist. They receive healthcare in the physical world. Their bodies change through physical science. So therefore, trans people is not an ideology, but a healthcare for a lot of trans people. For some trans people, it's more, they don't need that much. But in their mindset, they only think about hormones and things like that. So it's just a silly argument. It falls apart really fast. So, it folds under questioning really quickly. And usually when you're having these conversations with these folks, I always take what I call an exploratory approach, where you're literally investigative approach, where you're investigating their belief set on why they believe a trans ideology. And this is what Lux was speaking about a second ago, where it's like, so trans ideology, for it to be a religious ideology, would have to comport to a sect soul, where a trans person has a soul that is not comporting with their physical bodies, right? And you can ask that question, they're going to be like, wait, that's not what I'm talking about. Then I'm like, then how is it a religious claim? If it's a religious claim, then there would have to be some spirituality to that, would it not? Right? And then that's what I mean by investigating, right? You just start asking
Right.
questions, and then they fold under questioning.
Yeah, see, I did that in that space, and they didn't really like that.
Of course
they
not.
never do.
Because they fold under questioning. They fold under a little bit of questioning. It's like, you can't be trusted. They just fold under questioning. They're just like, oh my gosh, no, I don't want to have this conversation anymore. It's like, then you're the
Well,
idiot
'cause-
that brought up religious claims.
Yeah, like, 'cause, like, I don't know, it seemed like they wanted to just continue monologuing instead of, actually, like, because I would actually interrupt them at points to, like, engage with some claim that they made, right? Because that's what you're supposed to actually do. You go point by point by point. And they didn't like that.
Yeah, they're not there for that. I was in a Twitter space once, which was the Nightmare Blunt Rotation with Buck Angel, Blair White, Posey Parker, and a couple gays against groomers, and then Mars, that guy, and then and then a bunch of other just like random cis women that were just like affirming all of their stuff, and it was miserable. And by the end of it all, they were just saying, you're just twisting our words, Josie, that's all you're doing is twisting our words, because I was literally letting them speak. And then I'd be like, oh, okay, well, I agree with this. That's why this, and this agrees with that. So therefore, trans people exist for these reasons. And like, that's not what I said. I'm like, yes, it is. It's literally what you just said. And they get so mad. Oh my gosh. Blair White was so angry that she was literally seething. I could hear her breathing through her teeth onto the mic. It was hilarious. It was a good moment. It was a fun time. Nightmare Blunt Rotation, though. Don't want to be a part of that. So just be careful on Twitter Spaces. They just want to hear themselves bloviate. But good luck. I'm glad you did it, Nikki, even though it must have sucked.
Oh, it was terrible. I know. There was another person there who was like on their side, who was like one of those true trans, just saying some, like, trying to interrupt and derail the conversation and just saying some really nasty stuff. It was terrible.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
It's terrible. And they control the moderation so they can stop you. So they can mute you whenever they want. And it's just not a conducive place for debate. But I will always cherish the moment when Blair White was so angry. She was so angry. It was so good. It made me feel. It's like one of those moments in your life, and you're like, "Yeah, this is what made everything worth it." It's just like her seething, absolutely seething. I got to tell her too. I got to say, I was like, she's like, "You're probably just going to agree with what I have to say and twist my words." I was like, "No, Blair White, I would never agree with a word you've ever said." And she was like, "Ah!" It was so bad. I loved it. But anyways, well, thank you, Nikki. I hope that was helpful. It seems like you did great.
Thank you.
Yeah, it
Thanks
seems
for
like
taking my call.
you did well. Yeah, absolutely. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Bye. I will say that one of the funniest things is that, like, something that trans people said in the 70s to try to dumb things down for cis people now being brought up as, like, this is your ideological belief that we need to challenge. Like, I've seen a lot of TERFs recently saying, like, no one's born in the wrong body. And it's like, nobody actually believes that. We were just trying to make it palatable for your dumbass. And now you're treating that like it's our actual truly held ideological position. And it's like, no, this is just a thing that we said to try to get you on board. It was like, in tangible reality, like you were saying, Josie, it's just, I wanted to take this medicine. I wanted to look like this. And when I took the medicine, I started looking like that. I felt a lot better. Boom. Like, but there was a time when that narrative did seem to make sense to cis people. Is like, I just have a soul, or I was born in the wrong body or something. Like, it was just a way of getting cis people to understand the basic concept. Because I think some people could kind of understand the basic concept of, like, I was born in this body, but I feel like this, which is ultimately what it means. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, and then they completely bastardized it. Of course.
Yeah. So anyway, thanks
All
everybody
right.
for hanging out with us. We have 2 more callers.
Yeah,
The lines are
more calls.
closed. Get your votes in, $5 super chats, hashtag Team Josie or hashtag Team Lux, and we will read those $5 super chats at the end of the show. So we are now going to take Clayton from Texas, who is a former conservative and trying to learn more about the queer community. So what's up, Clayton? How's it going?
I'm good. It's pretty good. How are you?
Good.
Doing pretty
Thank
good
you
so
for
far.
waiting on the line with us. I know it's been a long
Yeah.
show. Thank you for hanging out.
Yeah, I've just been listening, and the big thing with like the Matthew person that y'all talked to, and the second call that y'all talked to, I was just
Mhm.
like, yeah, I thought a lot like that person at one point or another, and I feel kind of embarrassed.
Yeah. Hey,
I think that's normal.
I've been there. I used to be like that person. Like, I was born and raised in Texas. I joined the Navy because of patriotism. Like I am a GOP child soldier. Like that's these things are lived realities that I have to deal with.
Yeah, I get you there. I understand that completely. Trust me. Essentially, like I grew up not like I wasn't necessarily conservative growing up, but like as I started getting like a little bit older, like mainly towards like starting high school, I kind of fell into the whole right wing pipeline kind of, and I spiraled from there. Um, and it only started like about last year where I actually started like about when I finally just when I finally like accepted myself being like queer. I was like, these people that I thought were like intellectuals and stuff, and they don't actually care about me. They are just if anything they want me to like not exist at all. They want to take everything that I am away from me. And I felt disgusted by that. And ever since I've kind of like tried to be a better person and just learn more about the community, especially because I don't fully understand myself right now in some ways, and because of the years that I've spent like not being open about myself, and it's kind of led me to be a little bit like confused about myself in some ways.
Yeah.
Well, I will say this, Clayton. What you're dealing with is trauma. It's called having internalized homophobia, internalized, transphobia, all of that stuff, and having to deal with all of that, and coming to the stark realization that you were probably mean, you were probably aggressive, and you were probably self-hatred towards yourself, right? And so you got to give yourself grace and understand that you are dealing with trauma that you put onto yourself, and it's not a fast and easy process to be able to be like, oh, I'm queer now, everything's good, everything's great. You now have to deal with that internalized trauma and transphobia and queerphobia that you had, because I came out at 34 years old. I joined the military. I was a conservative in Texas as well, right? I was raised Catholic and then moved on to a Pentecostal church religious system, right? Like there are so many points in my life that set me up to be very self-hatred toward myself, and it takes a lot of healing and self-love to be able to get out of that space where you're just like, no, I love myself, I love who I am, I'm happy with who I am, and I'm going to surround myself with chosen family that are going to be there to affirm my lived reality on who I am. And it takes time, and it's not easy, right? And so go ahead.
a big thing with me was I definitely had I always knew I was different from pretty much elementary school. It was just I never could express myself because of how my dad was. Um, he was he's the like I need to be I need to be manly. I need to be like this perfect like macho man while also like he wouldn't even let me watch things like Modern Family because it had a gay couple and he thought it would make me gay.
Classic.
Which
Yeah.
yeah, and that was like a big problem for me. And I kind of took it out on other people around me too. Like I live out in the middle of Texas, like in the middle of nowhere, and so there's a lot of conservatives out here where
you
I
might live where I was closely raised. I was raised west of Dallas Fort Worth.
Yeah, I was raised east from Dallas.
Okay, so we were on
I'm
opposite
near
sides.
Greenville, if you know where that is.
Okay, yeah. I do. So yeah, I grew up next, very close to Weatherford, Texas.
Yeah.
I won't say the exact town, but yeah. Actually, it's
Mm.
Mineral Wells, Texas. It's not a secret. It's where that
Yeah,
was where none of my family's there anymore. So yeah.
yeah, I've been there before. It's a decent
Oh, I'm
little. It's a
sorry.
decent place. I mean, it's been a while since I've been there, though. It's been like I went there, I believe, when I was like 10 or so. So I probably can't remember it too well. But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I live in the middle of nowhere though, and there wasn't a lot of like it wasn't a very accepting place. Like um, I was I was bullied a lot. Like the biggest like a my problems were like when I was in school, I was with a friend and we were talking and we were in like we were in music class and stuff, and he was messing with like some instruments and stuff that the teacher told us like not to touch, and so I didn't want him to get in trouble, so I grabbed his hand and was like, no. I was like, dude, you're gonna get in trouble. And he was like, oh yeah, right. And the teacher saw that and she was like, oh look, Clayton has a boyfriend. And after that I proceeded to get called like the F slur and stuff constantly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
yeah, and it went that kind of started my hatred towards myself and like um the the very few other queer kids that were in my school. And I definitely did take it out. Like there was one of there was we had a boy in my high school. He was a cheerleader, and I kind of like I never said anything directly to him, but I did talk about him and stuff, and I kind of just like I took out my own hatred onto him, and
Yeah.
it wasn't right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm sorry you had to deal with that. I also it's incredibly hard, but this is your time to heal though, Clayton. And
Yeah.
and when we look back at those times, we know that we are hurting. Hurt people, right? I'm sure you've heard that before.
Yeah.
And sometimes and when your kids, people are mean. That's how it works. And and so I would not be so hard on yourself about these things, but knowing that what you did and how you felt about yourself was not healthy is a really good place to be. I recommend that you find a local LGBTQ center, right? Make some friends. I think surrounding yourself around like-minded people, that are queer, is going to be a really good way to kind of rekindle that relationship with yourself. So you can start, being around people who love you makes it easier for you to love yourself. Sometimes it's a really nice band-aid. And so you're a beautiful person, and and that's one of the things that you have to remember is that you as a queer person that went through this experience are going to help other people that are going through this experience as well. and and bonding with other queer people that have probably similar experiences that you experience will only help make you stronger and more resilient.
Mm.
And that's something to think about as well, as going through these experiences of this type of trauma, because I know builds what I call resiliency, and it will actually make you stronger, right? It will
Yeah.
make you more connected with yourself, and what you like, because you'll have more freedom to give yourself the ability to love what you love. And that
Yeah.
I think is very, very, very important. Lux,
Mm.
do you have anything to add? I kind of dominated this conversation.
No, not really. I just think, it's crucial, very important to get in touch with other trans people and, sorry, not other trans people, other queer people, and to, yeah, give yourself that opportunity to grow and, say, I understand that I did things harmful and I understand why I did those things. And, moving forward and just working to, you know, put more good in the world than whatever bad
Yeah.
you've already put in, balance it out.
Yeah, I've surrounded myself with I'm very fortunate to live with my grandparents who are surprisingly very accepting of who I am. Um, not all my family is, but I've done a good job. Like my uncle, I've talked to him and stuff, and he's also queer, and he's like, yeah, I understand completely where you're coming from. He said he was the same exact way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely spend more time investing in those relationships, and that'll probably help moving forward with
Yeah.
decompressing, and obviously getting a therapist can probably help too, but and it's not
Yeah,
always
I've
accessible.
gotten one, but they're so expensive out here. Like my the insurance we have doesn't cover them at all. So
Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
it's
hard.
entirely
That's
out
hard.
of pocket. Mm.
Yeah.
But I've definitely tried to open up myself more to people in the community. I recently started watching The Line literally last week because
Oh,
I had
yay.
started I had literally just started watching a bunch of different content and stuff, and I was like, oh, one of the people that I watched that was Forrest. He was on here, and I had watched some of his stuff, and then I discovered all the other videos on here, and I was like, oh, these people are really cool, and I wanted to I feel like I could call in and open up a little bit, and as well as get some advice from like-minded people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty
Well,
sure
appreciate
that
that.
one of our Patreon rewards is getting access to the Discord. So if
Ah,
you're keen for more community, it might be worth checking that out.
yeah,
Obviously the people in the
Yeah.
chat are very nice, but that's only while we're actually
yeah,
live. But yeah, the
mhm,
Discord could be a good place to establish more community and get some more of that positive feedback.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, and thank you for calling in. And I'm
Thank
glad
y'all
that you
too.
are a new fan of the line, which is super
Mm,
great. And just give yourself grace, all right? Seriously,
I will.
this is your time to heal,
Yeah.
and you need to give yourself that level of grace and love, because you're a beautiful
Mhm.
person.
Thank you.
You made it through the hard part growing up in
Mhm.
Texas.
And now,
Now
yeah.
now it's time to move on and grow and be that member of the community that you're supposed to be.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I want to. I always try to be there for people, especially after everything. I understand a lot where other queer people come from, and I want to be there to support them because I do not want to see more suffering in the community that I'm a part of, and I don't want to. I especially don't want to see anyone hurt themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, thank you, Clayton,
Mm.
and call in
Thank you.
anytime.
Thank y'all. Bye.
All right.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.
You too.
Okay, looks like we have one last caller. We're gonna get through it, and then we've got super chats to read. If you want to get those in at the last minute, $5 super chats or more higher, we will read them out loud at the end, and you can use that super chat to vote. hashtag Team Josie or hashtag Team Lux. And it's also not too late to hit the like button if you want to help support the show in a non-monetary way. That is always an option. So we thank you very much for all that. And are you ready to take our last caller?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yes. All right. Kitty Tick from Oregon wants to talk about the dysphoria caused by the process of getting trans healthcare. Hello, Kitty. How's it going?
Hello. How are you guys today?
Super
Doing
good.
well.
A little bit tired, but good.
Me too.
I did want to add a tiny note about the earlier call. Matt was the third caller, I believe. He was talking about the non-binary babies. And I think he might have been talking about, I was with one of the callers previously that's mentioned that me and my wife are raising a baby right now. And we don't let anybody but us or like the two kids in the house can, but they're the siblings, and they also, one is a trans boy and one is a non-binary human. And so they kind of have a lot of respect for what we're doing for the kid. And so I don't have to worry about them being weird about it. But nobody but the people inside of our direct house have any knowledge about the baby's genitals, because it's nobody's business what the genitals look like right now. And like you guys were discussing, they're a blob. They have no gender yet. We want them to have all the opportunity. And when you stimulate a baby with multiple, like all the mediums, you get a smarter baby. And that's just fact. And so give a kid all the toys, you're going to get a better baby and a more full human earlier. And the other thing is to a degree, I actually, part of why I am non-binary is less because of my personal gender expression at home is much more feminine. But when I'm out and about, I don't really want anybody knowing my gender up front, because when they're off balance, entering a conversation by not knowing, they have to treat me like an individual. And that is a really nice thing. Instead of being treated, oh, this is a man, I'm going to treat you this way. Oh, this is a woman, I'm going to treat you this way. They have to audible, because they have no idea how to treat somebody that isn't gendered. And I think that that's a powerful tool, no matter what gender you were born, because it forces people to see you instead of something they expect.
Yeah,
right.
I can definitely see that being advantageous.
And especially while we still live in such a gendered society, that's part of one of the other things that we're raising them with, is just this tool in their belt.
I love
that. But so I hope Matt's listening so that he can understand that it's not even about like disrespecting that they might be part of the 95%. It's about giving them the opportunity, even if they are a part of that 95%, to have a more open like environment with their life.
Absolutely. Great.
Yep.
Well, thank you.
I know we're
Thank you
going.
for that.
I know it's long today, but my original thought is, so this next week I have my letter for bottom surgery is getting completed with my therapist, and then I have to schedule my next second letter before I can actually schedule with the urologist again, because all of my appointments got out of order for some reason, because mental health care takes forever, even in Oregon. And so one of the things leading up to this appointment is that, like, it's the appointment where I basically am going to have to go over all of my intense dysphoria so that the state feels like they can use their insurance to help me. And it's probably my absolute least favorite part of this entire process, and it has been the whole time. And it has felt like I almost don't want to just do the next one sometimes, and I'm willing to, but I feel like some people can't handle the mental stress of this, and that it is like a literal barrier to entry to some of the most in need people in the community.
Yep. You're absolutely right. We have added evidence to show this. WPATH has already put out recommendations that we should not be doing the psychological requirements anymore, because they are such a huge barrier. And insurance companies still haven't got the message. And insurance companies know that the mental health care requirement is a barrier for entry, so therefore they don't have to cover more of the surgeries, so therefore they're saving money by doing this. Or if you choose to do it without these letters, then it becomes cosmetic, and then they get an excuse to not actually cover it, is part of the issue as well. Because thank you, corporatized medicine and allowing insurance companies to decide which healthcare the patients need rather than the actual physical need of the patients themselves. So we are doing our best policy-wise to end this process, but you are absolutely right about this barrier to entry that does hang up people from being able to receive this care, to have it be covered by insurance. And these letters also expire, and they know that too. So sometimes you need to have a letter just for the consult. You get the consult and the surgery's 2 years later. Then you have to get new letters that the insurance needs for you then to then authorize the surgery 2 years later. It is an absolute mess. But yeah, I'm sorry that you're going through this process.
No, that's fine. It's fine. I just feel like something that could work very similarly and better would be just a euphoria-based consults instead of dysphoria-based consults, because you could diagnose that our mental health is improved without making us go over things that make us unhappy, like make us go over all of the euphoric moments that we've had while we are expressing our gender, or euphoria that we've experienced when accidentally expressing gender, like I did back when I was a kid that would dress up as a girl on Halloween, and I didn't know why I felt so good on those days, but I did. Yeah. And so those stories are as valid and as important as any dysphoric story. And I think that would be a much more healthy approach for our mental health, at least, especially as long as they're going to require this specific step. And I understand that you should see a therapist and talk to somebody to make sure that, but I don't know how much of it is really that important, depending on the person's desire to chase down their own info.
Yeah, and I agree that using dysphoria as a metric is not the best. I mean, I kind of operate under this assumption that if I were to ever pursue bottom surgery, I would basically just have to pay for it out of pocket. I don't know that I would be able to have it covered because I don't have very strong dysphoria. It's more of a pursuing of euphoria, or because the result that I would want is considered a non-normative result. I guess I could lie, but I don't necessarily fault trans people for obscuring the truth when they're seeking this care, because it's I mean, you're not going to give me the thing that I need, or you're cis people deciding what I need, and how many different things do I have to go into? And I think that this is a criticism that we've often made of the process in the NHS in the UK, that you have to tell a stranger deeply revealing things about yourself. And if you're seeking bottom surgery, even in the US, you have to tell a stranger deeply revealing things about your sex life, which is it's just a whole other level. It's I have to tell you what I think about. I have to tell you these are the exact circumstances under which I have sex. It's just deeply embarrassing to have to explain that to a cis person who is then going to decide whether you get the surgery you want or not. And, I just wish that we didn't have this system. Either we have to appeal to an insurance.
That is a trans man.
That's very useful. Yeah, for sure. But it's either you have to prove to the insurance that you need it, or you have a national health service and you have to prove to them that tax dollars should go to your procedure. And it just seems like it would be much better if we didn't do this way. But I would say, I would hope at least in Oregon that they're more open about it, and maybe not as strict with what they require. And you having a trans therapist also means that they know what needs to be in the letter in order to convince the insurance to cover it. So yeah, that makes a huge difference, I bet.
The one good thing about Oregon is I'm not in the sticks, and so I don't have the kind of support that somebody in Portland or Salem or Eugene does. I'm way out on the coast, and actually one of the most Republican places in the country. It's kind of grim sometimes, but we have a really good contingent of like left-leaning people that have been building up in the county over the last decade, because a lot of smart blue-leaning people have been looking at climate change for a decade, and they've been moving to the PNW coast, and so
it's going to be good over
nice
there.
that we're getting some changes building up. Like Pride went from a tiny booth at a farmer's market for 12 hours one day to a 4-day event where they rented out the old Sears space in the mall.
Nice.
Amazing.
And like it was amazing. And just the 4 years I've been here to see that evolution.
Yeah.
That's cool. It's good to know.
It is good to know. And I'll just say this. I think things are going to change as far as the insurance requirements. I know because WPATH took out even the PhD requirement for some of the letters that they require, is going to have more gender affirming like therapists that will use Euphoria as a model. I do believe that that's also going to be a big determining factor as well. And I do believe that as states get more inclusive with the way insurance has to provide healthcare, I think that things are going to get better. And so I know it doesn't help you now for the situation that you're dealing with now as you pursue your bottom surgery, nor mine when I had mine. It will be better for people like Lux if it pursues bottom surgery. So I think that is something that is silver lining, that we are going through this, and as we go through this, we're able to inform providers that this is a really silly process and we shouldn't have to have it. And places like Oregon will be probably one of the more progressive states that will pass better requirements that force insurance to cover healthcare based on one therapist letter rather than two psych letters from a PhD, which makes things much more difficult. But yeah. So I appreciate the call. I hope it gets better, and you're doing it, and you're almost there.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to share the last thing I wanted to share was my plan for helping myself with the dysphoria is for every story I share about dysphoria, the following story. It might change how long the appointment takes, but I'm going to share a euphoric story next. Yeah. And then I'll share a dysphoric story, and then I'll share a euphoric story. And I'll kind of try to balance the scales while I'm doing the appointment.
Yeah,
that's solid.
For sure.
Hopefully that'll help change the perception of like, what causes people to feel the need to go through this process in the first place.
Well, euphoria caused me to want to do this far more than dysphoria ever did. Like the good feelings, I felt that on me chasing the good feelings, like I have a history of addiction and drugs and a lot of other things. I'm big on chasing the good feelings. So like I was chasing the good feeling. I wasn't running from a bad one.
Yeah. Well, that's a great way to look at it. You got a good outlook. So awesome. Well, thank you so much for the call.
Hope you guys have a beautiful day. Thanks for taking my call.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, it's always good to hear about how things are going up in Oregon because I'm going to be moving that way. So if you want to help me move, you should give us super chats. And if you give a super chat of $5 or more, we will read it. It's time for super chats. Don't forget to vote #Team Josie or #Team Lux as we're going through this. But yeah, portion of your super chat goes to us. So if you want to support me moving to not Kansas, get your super chats in. So do you want to get us started, Josie? Yeah, not Kansas.
Yeah. $5 from Alisana Silverbow. Here's some support for #Team Josie hospital bill. Thank you, because I did get one. I'm glad to hear you're still alive and on the mend. Hoping Lux has no long-term symptoms. Same here.
Fingers crossed. I already have POTS. I would like it to not get worse. That would be great.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for your $5 dono. We appreciate it.
Hey.
$9.99 from Louise Richardson. Thank you. Says, I transitioned in the 70s. The term was transsexual back then. and it really wasn't until about 10 years ago that it changed. Yeah, I think I wasn't sure at first about, but I came to think of transgender as a better, gentler term. Yeah, there's like a lot of different things going on with like transgender versus transsexual. I amuse myself by calling myself a non-binary transsexual, but I do think transgender is more inclusive.
I think so too. 50 pounds. Thank you so much from Jackie Greenland. I can't watch live tonight as I'm at an industry award ceremony where I'm shortlisted for one of the categories. Ooh, best of luck. It's the second time being shortlisted for me, so who knows? Either way, I want to share the party spirit. Coin flip says team, hashtag Team Josie. Love that
There you
coin.
go.
Keep it. It's a lucky
And you have
one.
to get the hashtag in there. We don't count your vote if you don't do the hashtag. So
That's true.
thank you for the $10 dono from Starlights Exotics. Says, I love what you do. I want to call in soon as I think I'm experiencing internalized transphobia and would like some guidance with it. However, I'm always caught up with work. Yeah, it's understandably difficult to get into the show if it's in the middle of your workday. So don't feel bad about it. You can always join the Discord if you want some community contribution to that.
Absolutely. And remember, internalized transphobia, what you got to do is give yourself grace and patience and self-love. That's how you deal with that. That's what you got to do. You got to realize that you're not the only trans person on earth that deals with internalized transphobia. And, give yourself that grace and self-love and patience. And, we as a community understand. So a lot of us deal with it all the time. $5 from Larry Fishman. I've had an eventful month. My insurance company approved my FFS and BA breast augmentation. They will probably happen late summer and hashtag Team Josie. Yeah, and congratulations on FFS and getting some nice boobies.
Yeah. Continuing on, another $5 from Larry. Thank you. Says, my bottom surgery consultation is scheduled for early November, but the most significant thing is I was called ma'am for the first time. Oh, that's sweet. You could have voted for me in your second super chat. No, I'm just kidding. Oh, gosh.
$20 from Skiptoidius. What do you think about journalists who use transgender as a descriptor when writing about trans actors, musicians, etc.? Personally, I don't think there's a need for it. To me, it is the same as outing someone, in my opinion. Hashtag Team Josie. Let's keep them coming. I think that if the journalist wants if the journalist asks the trans person or musician that they want their trans identity used as, part of their identifier, I think it's completely fine, because I think it's sometimes there's a lot of trans musicians and actors that actually want to use that representation to show the community that I'm here, I exist, I'm a trans person. So as long as the journalist is asking, I think it's completely okay. If they're not asking, then yeah, it might be a little sus depending on what publication it's going into. But yeah, go ahead, Lux.
And I think it can be relevant sometimes. Like, I don't know, like I saw some people talking about the fact that Elliot Page's dead name is on the Wikipedia. And it's like, yes, for certain people that are high profile, it is relevant so that people can know who it is. Like there's a continuation of the work that Elliot Page has done. So yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just sort of depends. But another $10 from Skeptoidius, thank you, says, one last super chat before I gotta go. Look, Matthew, it's about respect. Even if you don't believe that trans people exist, you can at least show a modicum of respect by using the correct pronouns. Hashtag Team Lux. Thank you. That's so true.
Yeah, on the board. You're on the board.
I'm on the board. At least I got one. Yeah.
So $5 from Mr. Boricua. See, Boricua. I say it like Boricua. So Boricua. I'm not going to mispronounce it again. You don't need a pronunciation for me anymore. Roll the R a tiny bit. I'm PR, listening from work. Here we go with dishonest ignorance and nonsense. Give them hell. Hashtag Mitternach?
That's my
I'm guessing
cat.
that's
His
you.
name is Mitternacht. Yeah,
Ah, Mitternach.
it's
Okay.
German for midnight. He's a
Okay.
black cat. I don't know where he is right now.
Aw.
I'll have to go find him if I gotta get some votes. Do I gotta use the cat? Do I have to get you all to just love him more than you love me? Anyway, I don't know. 5 pounds from Sean Isherwood says, what some people don't realize is how much being misgendered and called the wrong name hurts. Why would you knowingly, unnecessarily hurt someone so cheaply? Yeah, it's a mystery.
Yeah.
Why? And you're potentially outing someone. Like, it's not a
Yeah.
kind thing to do.
It's not. And what if you're
Trying to
wrong?
support a kind world. Yeah, and what if you're wrong too? True.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, we didn't even get into that. It's like, oh, what if they're like an actual cis woman who's just more masculine presenting? Like, happens all the time. $7.23 from Jonathan. I saw the TV Glow recently, and it was pretty damn intense and melancholic. Definitely one of those movies you need to watch multiple times. Yes, and still one of my favorites. I love that movie so much. If you haven't seen it, go watch it.
I apparently need
I think it's
to,
out
but
on.
I've
I
heard
think
that
it's
it's
on
really
Max
intense.
now.
It's on Max,
It is
yeah.
very intense. Yeah, it is very intense. So prepare. Have a nice cozy blanket.
$5 from Adrian Morgan, parentheses, Goose. It doesn't matter if you say the rude thing in a nice voice or polite words. It's still rude. Matthew, love the show. # Team Lux. Yeah, like,
Yes.
I get it. I get it to some extent. Like if you think being rude is something you have to do on purpose, but like, I don't know. Like, this is clearly not someone who's
Which makes it
autistic
even
and has had people
worse.
accuse them. Yeah, like I've been accused of being rude for like completely what feels to me like innocuous things because I'm autistic. It's like, yeah, welcome to the
Yep.
real world, my dude, where you can be
Oh,
like thinking positive things about everybody and still be rude. Anyway, look forward to the next
yeah.
time he calls in.
Yeah. $200. I'm gonna say Australian monies.
That's
I'm not
something else.
sure.
I don't know what that is.
I don't know what that is. From Olivia B. You gotta move it to Matthew. Oh, you gotta give it to Matthew. He's more regular than any other host.
Almost.
Sad,
It's
but true.
Argentinian pesos. Argentinian pesos.
Argentinian pesos. Oh, I love it.
Yeah. That's cool. Thank you.
So this one's not
God
worth
bless.
$5, but since they gave 20 before, I figured we could count
Yeah.
this one.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
I'm not gonna be
that
that nice
hashtag
all the
Team
time
Josie.
though. So don't start expecting I'm gonna put your cheaper ones through all the time. This is just a one-time thing.
Hashtag Team Josie is all that matters here. And I'm glad.
Mhm.
Thank you for not forgetting Olivia. I almost my name was almost Olivia. Believe it or not, that was the first name that I went by for a short period of time. It's a good name,
Fun.
but Josie. I'm a Josie. Very clear.
Yep. $5 from Aliashana Silverbow says, thank you, Matthew, for proving the point of why Takis is so important. The patience shown by Lux and hashtag Team Josie is nothing short of incredible. Yep.
Yes. Thank you.
It's so funny that he doesn't feel like I'm being rude to him, but I definitely feel like I'm being rude to him. I'm like, I don't respect you at all. Like, I'm being real mean on purpose.
Yeah. $5 from Haley Granger. Matthew, again, I feel sorry for you. Here, have some monies. Also, hashtag Team Moss. That another one? You got all these names.
I know. I changed my channel name. It's been Luxander for a really long time, but I changed the channel name to Musing Moss because I'm going to start making video essays and stop doing daily political content. So this is the most political you're going to see me is on this show. It's like, this is the only reason now why I need to pay attention to the news is so I can help contribute to the poll. Yeah. Making changes.
Got it. Making big changes.
Yeah.
$5. I think it's Hugh, right?
Yeah, $5 from Monkey at Typewriter. Thank you. It says, does Matthew think that we can't identify malicious acts without people self-identifying as malicious? Like he thinks people are going around going, I'm engaging in bad faith twirls mustache. Yeah. Like, people are only rude on purpose.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
That's funny. That's funny.
$5 from Alessandra Silverbow. A comedian told some jokes about contagious diseases, but I didn't catch any of them. Hashtag I avoid diseases like the plague. Hashtag Team Josie. Hashtag get well soon Lux. That was both
Yep.
of our points on the board.
I mean, that one's a Team Josie for sure. It would be hashtag Team
But you
Lux,
gotta-
and then I got
Hashtag
an
get
honorable
well soon
mention.
Lux. Is
Yeah,
honorable
I consider
mention?
that
Do
an
we count
honorable
that as
mention.
just me?
No,
I think
So
yeah,
you're
that's
just gonna
just
give
you.
me that point?
I'm the rule maker here, okay? Because, you know, who cares? I'm going to
Yeah,
say,
voice of
I
God.
agree with Lux's argument. I think it's Team Josie, and it's a get well. Also, I don't
Okay.
think Lux has lost a single one of these, so I'm low-key rooting for Josie to win.
I did. I
Oh.
lost that one that I had to defend that being a cis male was the hardest thing in the world.
Oh, that's right. You did. Okay. Yeah, you did
Right.
have one.
It's not a
That's
comeuppance,
right.
Arden.
The voice of God. I got God on my side. Let's go.
True.
If
That's
only,
what's important.
if only they were real. If only it meant
True.
something.
Yeah.
$5
$5.
from Jiminy. Oh, okay. Go ahead.
I don't care. It doesn't matter to me.
I don't care. $5 from Dominic06. I want to see the doctor about my short-term memory problems. The first thing they did was make me pay in advance. Hashtag Team Josie. Ha 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 ha.
That's pretty cool.
That is pretty funny.
$5 from Julia Scala says anyone can purchase medication from overseas sources and have it shipped to the US, like HRT. To bypass the draconian laws and just get their hormone panel. Yeah, so it is legal for anyone to get estrogen, but it is not legal to purchase testosterone without a US legal prescription. It is a felony. So
Yep.
if you are going to acquire testosterone, do it in a way that is acceptable.
Illegal.
But yeah.
And don't be
Yep.
gay, do crime.
Don't take risks.
$4.99 from Stacy 1904. Hashtag Team Josie, because you just made my day with the Blair White story. I
Mhm.
wish I saved that whole interaction. It was on a Twitch VOD, and I think the Twitch VOD went away. I might be able to dig somewhere for it, but it's one of those like oldies but a goodie situation where I should totally pull that out because it was
I think people would like to
hellish.
see it. Yeah.
I think they would. Yes.
You gotta monetize it somehow. You gotta make it
I
worth it
do.
somehow.
I do.
$5 from Jamnico6 says, what do you call a haunted chicken? A poultrygeist. Hashtag foul jokes for the win.
Oh.
Hashtag Team Josie.
Yeah,
I enjoy the
let's
puns. Thank you.
go.
Thank you for that.
$5 from the best shirt. You guys are so helpful in transitioning. And transitioning would be so much harder without you. Much love, Heart, Ben. Aw, Ben, you were great. Thank you for the call.
Take your pills, Ben.
Yeah.
Someone in the chat was like, be a good girl and take your estrogen. And I was like, that's too much. And then I repeated it, you know? We repeat bad things sometimes. Oh gosh. Anyway. $5 from Jamnigo6 says zombies don't eat clowns because they taste funny, nor do they eat pirates because they're too salty. Yet vegan zombies prefer eating grains. Hashtag Spooktober. Hashtag Team Josie. Just like a never-ending number of votes for Team Josie. It's okay. You have been absent lately, so I understand.
I have. These are all all the votes that I didn't get in the previous couple weeks. They're all coming in now.
Mhm. Yep.
$5 from Elishana Silverbow. What's the difference between the bird flu and the swine flu? One requires a treatment, while the other requires an ointment. Sorry, not sorry. Hashtag Team Josie. Let's go. I know that was a good one. That was really.
That was a funny one. I enjoyed that.
That was a very punny one. Yeah.
Nice. $10 from Julia Scala, thank you, says, when I was getting ready for GRS, I asked the surgeon after the surgery, will I be able to orgasm like cis women? He looked me in the face, paused for a second, and said, oh, you mean like fake? That's funny. I
Yikes!
don't think
But
that is actually a real thing that happened, but it is very funny.
I know things that never happen, but it's a good one.
And everybody clap.
Yes. $5 from Monkey at Typewriter. When Matthew said you were affirming his position, I lost any sense that he's serious. Dude is either a troll or the dentist caller. Hashtag Team Caliente Josie. Let's go.
Yeah. Apparently, Matthew has called in to a different atheist show a bunch of times too. So I genuinely do think that it's like he's a troll, or he's finds himself feeling validated by our conversations. So it's not the most good faith interaction, but I still enjoy yelling at him. So he's going to get on at least a couple more times.
It's also the possibility. It's also the possibility that he doesn't get to have like actual conversations like this ever, because like people are probably just so fed up around his life. Like, shut up! I don't want to have this stupid argument with you again. And we're like, we're all really good rhetoricians, where we're actually able to like hold our cool and have long conversations. And I think that's what he appreciates. Again, it's all speculation.
Yeah, who knows? You can actually pronounce this correctly.
Yeah, Boricua. So, Boricua. Yeah. I enjoyed the back half of the show today. Great show after Matthew. Much love to those having issues. Hashtag T-Lux.
I got one. Yay.
You did.
Thank you for the $10 from Natalie Marie, saying Brianna Wu went on Buck Angel's show. She wants to eliminate self-ID, revert the DSM to before non-binary was added. She wants conversion therapy for fetish cross-dressers, how to battle trans people with political influence. I don't even know. Brianna has said so many dumb things recently.
Oh my God. It's so bad. And you know what? My phone is cursed because I actually have her cell phone number in my phone. Like,
no, really? Oh, because she did run in Maryland or whatever. Yeah.
She did, and no, Miss Massachusetts. Don't give her. I'm in Maryland.
Okay.
No, don't you give her Maryland.
My bad.
But no, it was funny because like she called me and we talked, and it was before she was out like publicly as a trans person, and it was the weirdest conversation because we actually talked about voice surgery. And she was like, oh, make sure you get voice surgery. It's the most important one of them all. And I feel bad for her because she's actually losing her voice physically. And I'm just like,
I've heard that.
Voice surgery is not actually that great for you. And a lot of times it's not successful, use voice therapy. So I always think it's weird that was like the thing. She was like, make sure you do that. That's like the most important thing. And now it's like, oh, that's so bad for her. But I also don't, because she's such a weirdo. Anyways.
Yeah.
I
don't feel bad.
I don't feel bad either. Well, I do. I would be so sad if I lost my voice. So I feel like I don't want to be Ariel. Like, no, don't take it. Leave me. Let me have it, please.
She's got her fingers. She can still make herself very, very heard.
Yes,
it's
that's
fine.
True. That's true. Anyways, go ahead.
Anyways, $9.99 from Kevin Sweet says, my superpower is knowing how many of us are out there helping. Please human responsibly. Yeah, for sure. Look for the helpers. There's a lot more of us than you think.
Yep, that's right. $5 from Dominico6. The plague, the flu, and the common cold walk into a bar. The bartender says, what is this? Some kind of sick joke? Hashtag trolling. IPEA. Hashtag Team Spicy Josie. Let's go.
Yep. It's like not even a close race today. Not even a little bit.
I know. I feel bad. Sorry, Lux. So awful.
Terrible.
It just means they want to hear you, Lux. That's all. It means they want to hear you talk.
They want to hear.
They want more of me. It's true.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, $5 of what I believe is Australian money from Darren McAuliffe says, love what you do. Thanks on behalf of everyone. Hashtag Team Lux. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah. $10. Thank you. From YouTuber Grudge. I like the idea of the Euphoria model. It sounds so much more positive. Love to all the eggs and the omelets out there. Get loved. Get all the support. Get all of the love you need. Hashtag positivity. Hashtag Team Lux.
Yes. Look at that. I have half as many votes as you. Love.
Yay!
$5 from Secular Felinist says, you were far too patient with Matt than I could ever be. Hashtag Team Mitternacht, hashtag Team Poppy, hashtag Team Cats Rule. I think that's a null vote, because your Poppy's your dog, right?
No, Poppy
Erika
was
is my
Katy
dog.
Montgomerie's cat. I'm counting that as a vote for
Oh.
you. Yeah.
Okay, I'll
Yeah.
take it. There we go.
Yeah, I have
My
a
cat
dog.
is nowhere to
I
be
have
found right now.
a dirty dog.
Gross.
$200 from Argentinian monies. From Olivia B. Love Josie as a name, but it doesn't work in Spanish though. That was the thought when I was thinking of my name Josie, and it was a hard decision to make. But I was thinking Josie. And you could throw a little accent. It's like Josie Caballero. It sounds good, So if I want to put a little, Spanish accent on it sounds good. We're reclaiming it in Spanish, okay? It's Josie.
Josie. Yeah. I
Right.
heard you say your own name one time, and for a long time, I was like, I'm gonna pronounce it like Josie because that's how you said it.
Are we ready?
It's funny because
Oh, sorry.
hold on 1 second. I was like, it's funny because for a long time I wasn't sure if I pronounced my name Josie or Josie. And it was like one of those things that it took me a long time, and then I realized it's Josie, like Josie and the Pussycats. And then I figured out that's what I say. But in Spanish, it's Josie Caballero. So yeah. So
Makes sense.
I've Spanish. I made it Espanol. It's fine. I got it.
Okay, Arden.
Ready? 3, 2, 1, go.
Yeah. Okay. So sandals should obviously only be worn with socks because, I know people always say, you should never wear socks with sandals. Okay. It's actually the opposite because nobody wants to look at your feet. And the people who do want to look at your feet, you don't want to give it to them for free. Okay. That's why we censor the feet when we post pics online. All right. It's so much more comfortable. Okay. You're wearing socks, especially if you're going to the beach where it's wet and sandy. You definitely want to be wearing socks in that situation because the squishiness just feels amazing. Okay. And furthermore, once again, no one wants to look at your feet. I know you got the pretty pedicure. It's private. And also it's very stylish. That way you can show off all of the wonderful, you can show off your wonderful socks. I've got so many cool socks. I got some that have Jack Skellington on them. I've got ones with pretty designs. And it would be doing the world a disservice if you didn't show off all your cool socks with your strappy. In fact, the sandals that you should be wearing on top of this, in fact, are flip-flops. You got to get the weird thong thing in between the toe of the sock. That's what feels the best, okay? Not toe socks, okay? You might think, oh, I could get away with this if I did toe socks. No. It has to be regular socks. Toe socks is cheating. Nobody wants to see your toesies. Again, that's too much tantalizing. It's like wearing lingerie in public, okay? You can't wear toe socks with sandals because that would be it would be too revealing. You got to leave something to the imagination, folks, okay? That's what's important here. And you can color match also with your socks, with your sandals. Yeah, I think that's just about all I've got.
The color matching, you could set whole new trends, that's, solid color with a solid sandal. Oh my gosh, the one that has
You gotta have
little toe
patterned
thong
socks
on
with a
there.
solid sandal. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and it's got to be a toe thong. If it's not, then what are you even doing? What are you?
During that, we got a $50 super chat from Bobtail Trucker. That was #Lux. So
thank you.
Oh wow,
that's very generous.
made a compelling argument.
That's
Clearly,
a very compelling argument. Very
Yep.
compelling.
I just like to say increasingly cursed things during that segment.
That's the best. That's why I love it.
Yeah, it's a fun time. All right.
It's a good.
Thank you, everybody, so much for joining us. That was the Transatlantic Call-In Show for today. Join us next week. I don't know who's hosting, but let's dance. Let's get some music. And did you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you know that you can do Patreon and get on the list over here? Wow.
Yeah,
the list
over
gets
here.
longer every time.
Over here.
You can directly support the show.
It's super long. It's almost twice as long as when we started. Maybe like 3 times as long as before it started. Like we actually have to dance and be awkward longer. Great.